That's all. October 9th, we got it.
We have one for the 9th and one for the 7th. No, this is 7th and the other one was the 9th. Yep. I did, I looked at them. I read it.
It's in the March.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting of the McHenry County Zoning Board of Appeals to order. The purpose for our hearing today is application Z25-0077. The applicant is Water Locust Solar LLC. This is a request for a conditional use permit to allow for a commercial solar energy facility. There are two PIN numbers associated with this application, 09-12-200-014 and 0901-400-008. The property consists of approximately 54 acres and is located at the southeast corner of the intersection of North Spring Grove Road and West Ringwood Road in McHenry Township, Illinois. We'll start by having the Zoning Board of Appeals members introduce themselves and the township in which they reside, starting on my left.
Robert Cozen, Algonquin Township.
Mary Donner, Greenwood Township.
Charlie Eldridge, Richmond Township.
I'm Linnea Kustra in Alden Township.
Vicki Gardner, Nunda Township.
Kurt Schnabel, Riley Township.
Jessica Beverly, Door Township.
This petition has been reviewed and the following items have been received prior to today's scheduled hearing. Publisher's certificate of publication from a newspaper is dated September 27, 2025, and thereby meets ordinance requirements. Affidavit of posting was signed and date posted was September 29, 2025, and thereby meets ordinance requirements. Affidavit of mailing was signed and the date mailed was September 25, 2025, and thereby meets ordinance requirements. The survey has been checked against the petition, legal notice, and publication in the newspaper, and all three match. The filing fees have been paid. The endangered species consultation has been received, and the McHenry County Soil and Water Conservation District report has been received. This would be NRI 250684729. For everyone, if you've never been to a hearing before, I just am going to explain a little bit about how things work. For anyone who's hard of hearing, if you can't hear us, we don't have microphones today. I encourage you to come up to the front. There's a few chairs, closer to the front so that you can hear what's going on. This is being recorded as well. This is a quasi-judicial hearing, so rules of testimony apply. Anyone who wants to speak is going to have to be sworn in. And how it works is the petitioner will present their evidence to us, why they believe that this solar farm should be approved. And then they'll be asked questions from the board. Then they'll be asked questions from staff. Then at that time, if there's any member of the public who has a question, you'll be allowed 3 minutes to ask your questions of the petitioner. It must be regarding their testimony, and we ask you not to be repetitive. You must be respectful of the board and the petitioner. I just want to remind you, this is not a rally, it's a hearing. There's no applause. The only person that can speak is the person who has the floor, but everyone will get their chance to ask questions. The question portion, however, is not the time to make a statement. You'll be given that opportunity later in the hearing. So after the questions are all asked, then the board will hear the testimony from the staff. They evaluate everything regarding this petition, so they'll be giving us their report. And after that is all done, then it's the opportunity for the public. If you would like to make a statement regarding this petition, you're given the opportunity to do so. Again, you'll have 3 minutes. I just used the timer on my phone. Whether you're asking a question or making a statement, you need to identify yourself and give your address, and then you can move on from there. And again, I ask you not to be repetitive. we're listening to all the comments. We're here to represent the county and the public, and so you'll have your opportunity. But before we start, I'm just going to ask staff to just remind us all again about the state statute and how we are bound, what we can do as a county.
Sure. So as noted within Public Act 102-1123, a request for a conditional use permit for a commercial solar energy facility shall be approved if the request is in compliance with the standards and conditions imposed within the act, the zoning ordinance adopted consistent with this code, and the conditions imposed under state and federal statutes and regulations. A county may not adopt zoning regulations that disallow commercial solar energy facilities from being developed or operated in any district zoned to allow agricultural or industrial uses. Public Act 102-1123 was adopted in January of 2023 and essentially mandates that counties approve solar facilities as long as they do meet the minimum siting standards.
Okay. So anyone who's going to give testimony or ask a question, I will go ahead and swear you in. So if you would like to do that, then please raise your right hand. Do you affirm that the testimony you give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And again, before we start, I just want you to know that this is being recorded and security downstairs is watching. And, I don't expect anything to happen, but it has happened in other hearings where we've had to call security because someone decides they don't want to follow the rules of the hearing. So I'm just telling everybody that up front. So I will just turn it over to the petitioner to present your case. Please identify yourself and then go forward.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Dylan Haber. I'm the lead developer with Water Locust Solar.
My name is Mark Gershon. I'm an attorney. I represent Water Locust Solar.
My name is Paul Pensy. I'm from Kimley Horn. We're the engineers working with Cultivate on this project.
I'm going to open a little bit and then allow Dylan to get into the substance. I should mention, since we talked about both Water Locust, I apologize, and Cultivate, that Water Locust is a subsidiary of Cultivate Power. That's the connection between the two. I have in my life served as an attorney both for ZBAs and for different governmental entities as well as for private developers. And it's really a privilege for me to once again be back before you. I'm going to introduce the project sort of a 30,000-foot level and then provide a roadmap for where we're going from there. We're really excited about this project. We appreciate the input we've had from the community and appreciate the time that your staff has spent on this and we've had an opportunity to work with them on. This project includes development of a solar energy facility of up to 5 megawatts of generating capacity, which is enough to power about 1,100 average homes. The project is located near the southeast corner of North Spring Grove Road and Ringwood Road in McHenry Township. We use about 32 acres inside the fence of the 41.3 acre parcel. You should note that if you look at your staff report, you'll see that we've reduced the size of the project from our original application, which was essentially to open up the northwest corner of the project, which is no longer a part of it. And the project, as was mentioned, is currently zoned for ag, which you have as a county and the state of Illinois has already determined that that is an appropriate location in the agricultural districts for solar farms. And I know that this board has heard that before, but I do think it's an important thing because I don't believe we're here to decide whether or not solar power should be in agricultural zone districts. You've already decided that, the state's decided that. We're not here to decide whether or not solar power is something that should be supported. That's part of Illinois state law. We're here to look at this project in particular, and that's what we want to try and spend our time on. Let me...
Can you verify going forward that there's no battery storage? This is strictly a solar. Okay.
I was going to wait on that, but absolutely. I know there's some miscommunication out there, and I think we've seen some of there was a letter that was copied and sent by several people. There is no battery storage in this project. It's not part of our application, and it's not part of what's being developed here. Okay. So for however that misinformation was out there, I appreciate your clearing it up. if you want to hit me on the other items too, it'll make our presentation easier, but I do appreciate it. I want to talk about some of the benefits. And look, one of the most clear benefits here is clean renewable energy. Your comprehensive plan talks about the benefits of that and why this county wants clean energy here. One of the realities of the world is that none of us, I would hope, are here in this room saying, hey, let's stop generating electricity. And in fact, as we've seen in every study, the demand for electricity in this country is only growing. So the question is, how are we going to generate that electricity? And one of the reasons that I enjoy being part of these projects, going back to honestly when I was in 7th grade and created a solar panel for a science fair project, is that this is an incredibly low impact method of creating electricity, and far more so compared to the other ways in which we generate electricity in this country. So it's one of the reasons why there's so much support for solar energy. But beyond that, there's some very direct benefits to this community as well. The project involves a significant investment in your community of approximately $7 million. In taxes, the taxes this project will generate are about 18.5 times what the property currently generates. The project will generate about $28,868 in the first year of taxes, and over 40 years, approximately $633,500 in taxes. And they'll go into this in greater detail. There's job creation, prevailing wage construction jobs, and jobs both during the construction and then long-term in terms of maintaining the project. And one of the other good things about solar is, as mentioned, by the way, I believe your 2030 plan mentions this, but also the 2050 plan that you're currently considering also discusses the fact that solar is a long-term but temporary use of the property and allows preservation of that property in the future for fun. And that's a very important part of why your comprehensive plan has support for renewable energy. This board knows all about the AMAs. I know you see a lot of these projects. So the only thing I'm going to talk about in the AMAs is that, for those who are here, the Illinois Department of Agriculture created something called the Agricultural Impact Mitigation Agreement. It's a document that we've signed. I'd love to say that we are the only people who signed it without making a single change to it. The state doesn't let developers change anything in that document. They generated working with municipalities, with farmers, with developers, et cetera, and it goes through a lot of what you see as concerns. Many of the issues that we're seeing in some of these objection letters, they address things like what you have to do for decommissioning, what you have to do to secure the property during decommissioning, how you have to clean up the property afterwards. It also talks about protections for topsoil, talks about protecting and repairing drain tiles, talks about generating financial assurance for it. We are subject to that document. Your county is well aware of, and I know you are as well. That's why I'm not going to go into details. Obviously, I have a copy of one here. If you want me to go into details, I can. But out of respect for all of you and for people's time here, I'm not going to do that because I know you're already well aware of it. I do want to talk a little more. I mentioned your comprehensive plan. The 2030 comprehensive plan, which I thought I was going to spend a lot of time talking about until I read your staff report. They already go through in detail how we meet your 2030 comprehensive plan, why solar is in compliance with that. I thought it was interesting to read your 2050 plan. I'll admit part of that was that I didn't know exactly when, I'm not sure if you guys do yet, exactly when that's going to be approved, but I know it's gone through a lot of layers here. And it's interesting that you address that in even greater detail about the benefits of solar energy in the new plan. Everything from support of participating farmers and what those dollars benefit to them, to the need for the county to have a sustainable and secure energy future for its residents, and other specific benefits of solar. And so we appreciate that your current comprehensive plan, that we're in compliance with your current comprehensive plan, and also with the 2050 plan, which I know you're all currently looking at. One of the other more important things, as the staff just mentioned, is our obligation is to have met the requirements of your ordinance. We appreciate that that's been confirmed, but as a reminder in our application, Dr. Wayne read it, we walk through every single standard that you have and show how we meet that standard. And the reason I'm saying that is, again, out of respect, I'm not going to walk through each standard and show how we've complied with it because you've got that in writing from us. But we're here if you have questions about any of those standards. Please ask us. I'm not avoiding them for any reason. We've already given you a written report. Your staff's already reviewed that. But it's important to know there that we've confirmed with each of those. At this point, before I turn it over to Dylan, I would like to ask as a housekeeping matter on the record that all the documents that you mentioned we've submitted, as well as our applications, including exhibits A through K in that application, well, actually all the exhibits, the PowerPoint deck that you're going to see up here, our report from CohnReznick on property valuation that I will talk about a little bit later, the IDNR, EchoCAD, and all of our other documents be accepted into the record that we've already submitted to you. I want to talk just a little bit about the CohnReznick report. CohnReznick does a three-part analysis. I know you've heard from them before, but I'm going to say it just for everyone's purpose. They both do an analysis of the multiple academic studies that are out there. And I'm sure you're going to hear, because we saw it in the letters, from people who found like one or two sentences in there that they have an issue with. But I'll go in, if that's raised, I will go in and respond on each of those because the overwhelming academic evidence is that solar farms either have no material impact or a positive impact on surrounding properties. And I recognize that, look, the unknown is scary. It's why I actually like that CohnReznick doesn't stop there. They then go out and do the analysis of individual properties in Indiana and Illinois and surrounding properties, which I know you have seen before, which is why I'm not spending a lot of time on it, but literally looks at houses that are right next to a solar farm, whether there's an impact on them, as opposed to a house that's multiple miles away, that's similar, et cetera, and the evidence is that there's no adverse impact on those. I completely understand that the unknown is scary, but the advantage we have is, and I used to do these hearings 15 years ago, it's not 15 years ago anymore. We now have solar farms all across this country where they can do the actual studies and verify that. The last piece that I like that they do is, they also go and they interview assessors all over the country who have projects in their community, and the response they get, and which you've seen, you've got the report, is overwhelmingly by those assessors that they've seen no actual adverse impact and that they don't reduce the value of the homes based on them being near a solar farm. Again, I'm happy and I can spend 3 hours discussing all of those reports with you, but I think I'd rather at this point move us on to the project, and I'll be happy at the end when we have our chance for response to address any specific questions that are on that. That being said, I appreciate your time and I'd like to turn it over to Dylan. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And so I'll introduce myself again. I'm Dylan Haber. I'm a Senior Development Manager at Cultivate Power, and I'm the lead developer for the Water Locust Solar Project that we're here for today. A little bit quick of an overview of community solar in Illinois. I know the board here is well familiar, but just for everyone else in the audience here, the state passed in 2021 some legislation that requires 50% of the state's renewable electricity to be from, electricity to be from renewable electricity by the year 2040. Part of that is the community solar program, which this project is a part of, that allows customers within ComEd, whether you're a homeowner or a renter, a business, as long as you have an electrical bill, you're able to subscribe for a small portion of renewable energy from a community solar farm and receive bill credits off your monthly electrical bills. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about how we actually site these projects, because I know there's a lot of questions around that and why they can't be somewhere else. First and foremost, we are looking for the right dimensions and the right amount of acreage of a land to be able to fit enough panels there to make it a viable project. We need buy-in from a landowner and we do have that, we have a landowner who is here today and has signed a lease and is willing to be involved in this project. And then we look at the electrical grid itself. There's limited capacity on the distribution grid, whether it's the wires or the transformers. We do an analysis of what is available. We go through a study process with ComEd to understand whether it's even feasible to connect in at the property. And then we do kind of a desktop analysis of the properties themselves, trying to understand certain characteristics. Are we gonna have to clear cut an entire forest? Are we gonna be dealing with a stream or a wetland? Are we dealing with a mountainous or a high slope or bumpy property? So all of that goes into consideration. And then we look at the zoning codes that I have, or the zoning map site, which I have up here. And as Mark alluded to, here we are in an agricultural district, and you can see that, we're bordering on the village of Johnsburg to the east, but the remaining quadrants around our property are also zoned as agricultural. And then, so this is an overview of the project, and you can see, carrying on what I was just saying, is that we do have residential neighborhoods here, and you can see if you go a little bit farther east, you do get into the village of Johnsburg and some residential areas, but largely we're surrounded by agricultural area. The fields to the north, the northwest, the west, the southwest, even the south, that's all agricultural land, as is our property. And so that's we're aiming to take up 32 acres of this larger property to build a 5 megawatt project. This is a run through of the Unified Development Ordinance here, the solar section. I'm not going to run through in detail all of these, but I will point out a couple, and let's start with this bullet A here, which talks about setbacks, and that has been a question that's come up with a lot of the neighbors here being nearby to a residential area. The requirement is to be 50 feet away from a property line to site a panel, 50 feet away from any property line, or to site the nearest panel 150 feet from any residence on a non-participating property. And you'll see in a couple slides we've adhered to that in the site design. We're required to comply with the requirements around the height of the panels and the lighting. We're required to minimize glare, to consider environmental impacts, to plant a certain amount of low-profile native species, which we'll get into as well, and Mark alluded to too. We are required by the National Electrical Code to have a 7-foot fence around it. And then I'll zone in here on bullet H as well, and this is the one around visual screening. So anywhere where there are solar panels within 500 feet of either a residence on a non-participating property or a road right-of-way, we're required to include a vegetative screening there that reduces the view shed for the neighbors, and we have included that as well. So here's our site plan. I know this is kind of the meat of the presentation here, and you can see the neighborhood is off to the east here, and you can see some of the trees are these black circles that I put around the edges, and that those continue along the right-of-way and around the perimeter as well. We haven't included them here at the south side, mostly because there's already a dense tree coverage there, and we're going to be utilizing those existing ones. But you can see we'll connect in with our access road up at the north side with Ringwood Road. The access road comes in south to the center of the property here, where you can see the turnaround. That's a gravel access road that leads to the equipment pad. That's the central equipment for the power plant here. It includes transformer, it includes inverters, electrical inverters that convert power from DC to AC power, and then some of the switches and the panel boards that are associated with that. I'll point out too, that is the only area that is paved with concrete on the entire site. The rest of the field here, these vertical lines that you can see are all solar panels on a single axis tracker system. And that, for folks who may not know, the panels are kind of set on a tube that rotates throughout the day. Sun comes up in the morning, they're facing towards the east. As it arcs through the sky, The panels slowly rotate on a timer. At high noon, they're horizontal. That's your maximum generation for the day, highest output, and then they follow the arc through the sky towards the west, and they tilt, and by the end of the day, when the sun is setting, they're facing west. So that's kind of the overall site plan here, and we can get into further details later on if there are any questions around that. This is just a schematic of the vegetative buffer that we're proposing, and we use a mix of evergreen trees, which will be planted on the outside of the fence line. And then we do some infill with deciduous trees as well and shrubs to ensure kind of a standard thick vegetative buffer to reduce the view shed from any drivers or neighbors. Mark touched on the AMA agreement here, but I'll dive in a little bit more, and really there's some strict regulations here, the Illinois Pollinator Friendly Solar Act, that requires the entire field of the property, so that's all the area below the solar panels, to be seeded with a native plant mix that fits into the neighborhood and the existing environment, and allows for deep-rooted grasses for water to permeate into the soils there. And in addition, that the land, allowing that to happen enables the agricultural land, as it is a farm at the present moment, to lie fallow, to let the soils rejuvenate, to let the biological processes take place, so that when we decommission this thing 40 years down the road, you're able to remove the panels if the landowner so choose and go back to farming and have those soils ready and rejuvenated for farmland. And then in terms of the decommissioning requirements, there's that AMA goes into some pretty strict details around that, but just I know it's come up in the community outreach around what happens at the end of the service life here. And we put together a decommissioning plan. We itemize every single item that goes out there, and we put a specific cost to what the removal will look like. And we as the developer are required to go out there at the end of the service life and or when we decommission the project and remove everything. That's on us. And we fully intend to do that, and we understand that there are extenuating circumstances that may come up that we're not able to do that, and that's why we have this decommissioning bond that sits with the county to enable you to have the funds there for whatever reason, if we're not around, that you're able to go out and do that and restore this land back to its original functions. That plan also gets looked at by your engineers and gets reviewed every 10 years so that labor and material costs can be evaluated and the bond size can be adjusted if need be. So in terms of property tax, this is a big financial investment on our part. Mark mentioned we're looking at spending about $7 million to build this thing, and I did a preliminary analysis of what the property tax difference is going to look like, and I'll point you to the top right here, and the assessed value jumping from $24,000 as of last year to year one about $446,000. So the first year property tax is going to be jumping from $1,600 all the way up to almost $29,000. It's a really big increase, a lot more money flowing into the community here in terms of taxes, 18.5 times more just for this property alone. So that breaks down to $630,000 roughly over the course of a 40-year lifespan. So a lot of more money being pumped into the school district, the county, the fire district here, all these other entities over the lifetime. And I'll mention too, like with the school districts, they're the ones who are obviously seeing the greatest impact from this property tax bump of $450,000. And these solar projects don't add any new students to the school. It's not like we're building residential and raising the tax rates and then adding more students into the classrooms there. This is not adding any students. This is pure additional funds that they're free to do with as they wish. And then I've done a decent amount of local engagement here with the community. There are many folks here who today who I've spoken with already. I know the county does their own outreach in terms of notifying the neighbors. I've gone above and beyond that and sent out mailers with maps and my phone number and my email address to a larger area of neighbors, largely the community to the east who are the closest ones living to this property. And then I spent pretty much a full day last week walking around, knocking on doors, and a lot of the folks were home luckily and was able to have some good conversations with them, discuss their concerns, address their questions. We don't agree on necessarily everything, but I've very much made myself available to answer questions and to understand what their concerns are. And then, after that whole day of exchanges and understanding the local sentiment, there were a lot of people that said, hey, we're still not fully having our heads around this. We have a lot more questions. We have a lot more research to do. So I made myself available. I said, call me, email me, whatever you want. And we actually ended up setting up another session, like a session last night, Q&A, that I came out. We had about 10 or 15 of the neighbors come out. And then again, just more of their concerns, understanding some of the what they perceive as risks of solar power and of living next to a power plant like this. And so, like I said, we don't agree on everything, and I'm sure we're going to hear from a lot of them today. But I just want to put it out there that I have made myself very much available in an effort to get them the information that they're seeking around this project specifically and solar power in general. And then I've done some outreach to the village of Johnsburg as well. I was in touch with their administrator there and who notified me there was a board meeting last week that this solar project would be on the agenda for. So I attended that, I spoke up, I made myself available for questions. There was some good dialogue with the village board of trustees there. They asked me a number of questions on several different topics there. They did choose to object, and I know you received a letter from them about that. But I've just, I've been available to them and made myself a resource for any questions that they have had as well. And then McHenry Township too, I had a good call with the supervisor there, Gary Barla. I know he also has objected here, but we had a good 30-40 minutes conversation. He got his chance to ask all sorts of questions, and he opposes the project, but we did make some progress on some of the maybe misconceptions around solar that we may have had to start. I've also reached out to some teachers at the local Johnsburg High School, District 12, for a We Share Solar program. I know some of you have heard about this before, but again, I'll dive in just a little bit for everyone in the audience here. The We Share Solar is a partnership that is an organization that we at Cultivate have a partnership with. It involves a 2-day off-site training for high school teachers who are interested. It's fully voluntary to go and learn about solar. And what it is, it's this sort of solar suitcase that has a module, the panel, the electrical wiring, the little switchboard, light bulbs, things of that. And it gives them kind of your 101 scaled down version of what a solar facility really is, and gives them the education about how it operates. And the intent is for them to then take that and bring it into the classroom, whether it's part of their normal science class or extracurricular activities, and use it as a resource for high school kids to learn about solar and electrical generation. And so we've gotten great feedback on that from the teachers who have done it in the past. I've done some outreach. There's some interest from some of the teachers there, and that happens every year in July. So we're kind of at the early stages of the cycle here. And then just jumping down to the bottom here, the fire district, obviously, like, safety is first and foremost for any sort of development, and we take it very seriously. I've had some good conversations with the FPB director, Mr. Brent Innes. He has voiced just some of the ways that he and his emergency crews are thinking about this. They've asked for nothing at the moment, but they want to know what an emergency plan looks like. They want to know what access plan looks like. They've asked for, the fence not to be right up on the property boundary, to give them, a minimum of 10 feet out around the perimeter, just to be able to respond to any emergencies there. The initial engagement has been good, and I think we're going to be continuing the conversation with them. If we get approval and we move towards building and construction, just to keep them in the know so that him and his team are able to respond to any possible emergencies at the site. So this is my last slide. I'll wrap it up here and just say that solar power as a whole is a clean, reliable, locally produced form of electrical generation. These community solar programs plug into the ComEd distribution grid, which means they're not getting the electricity is not being exported to other states. It's generated in Illinois, it's consumed in Illinois, and it allows local subscribers to participate in the program to gain their credits and reduce their monthly electrical bills if they so choose. Solar as a whole, it's quiet, it's low maintenance, it's a temporary development that really allows the land to remain idle and be returned to its agricultural state in the future if our landowner so chooses. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a really significant amount of money that is going to be pumped into the tax base here, 18 times the amount that is currently being paid. So all of that, wraps up into great economic benefits for the landowner and for the community. So I'll end it there, and appreciate everyone listening to the slides and the presentation here, and happy to get into discussion and questions.
Expert, are you testifying anything specifically?
Just responding to any questions that may come up, ma'am.
Okay. All right, we'll start with questions on my right.
Thank you. I appreciate your desire for brevity, but I do a lot of community organizing, and I've got 35 people in a room on a work day in a long time, so I'm going to go through some of it. Is there any tree clearing proposed on your site plan?
No tree clearing proposed.
And you're not proposing putting anything on a wetland?
No, we haven't done a formal wetland delineation, but we have the county data, and it's not shown any evidence of a wetland on the property.
Great. Going back to your community outreach slide, the McHenry County Township Fire Prevention District, when you met with them, this isn't the first solar farm that they've encountered in their township, correct?
Correct.
And they have the equipment that they need to deal with any incidents that would happen on a solar farm?
They've not made us aware that there's a shortfall of equipment.
Right. And the emergency plan and access plans are all handled at the building permitting process, but you're familiar with what they're asking you to do, and your site plan is substantially conforming to that?
Yeah, that's correct.
Right. And can you go back to your slide on the tax benefits?
Yep.
And assuming that their levy stays the same, they stand to realize a substantial tax benefit from this project specifically?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. You noted that we have received multiple objections to this proposal. I wanted to look at the groundwater safety concerns. Can you please explain any chemicals that may be leached into the soil based on a failure of the panels?
Yeah.
So I think there's two different answers to that to go into. So the failure of the panels, I'll just pick something unique. So I think when the panels fail, the electrical shuts off, there's nothing happening to it. Another way, I think a lot of people have asked, well, weather hits, what happens to them? Well, it's tempered glass, so it doesn't break. It just kind of shatters, so the whole unit still stays intact. So nothing really happens to it. So there's really nothing really to leach when that happens. So in those cases though too, this is being monitored 24/7, just to make sure all the panels are working properly. So Cultivate will know exactly if something is offline, and they'll have somebody out there right away to fix it, just because it makes good business sense to keep all the panels up and running. The third item, I guess, in terms of leaching specifically, the EPA actually has tests on leaching for any kind of disposal. And specifically because you either have to do special disposal, like some kinds, certain, like demos, construction buildings, does it go in this landfill or this landfill? It does not have to go in a special landfill per the EPA standards on leaching testing, because it met those requirements where it didn't consider anything of value that would cause a concern in any kind of leaching in that case.
To clarify your testimony, there's no like cadmium in the panels. If there was a massive hailstorm and every panel shattered, there wouldn't be massive chemicals leached into that groundwater.
Typically nowadays, cadmium is not used in the process in most panels nowadays. The process itself, a lot of times the cadmium when it's referenced was a lot of the old panels before used a coating on top of the panels itself. That coating has actually been changed to a polymer, take rid of that. So typically most panels never have that included within it.
So what you're proposing installing does not pose any significant risk of groundwater leaching?
No.
Okay. Can you please explain the benefits of your land management practices for the native grasses and plantings versus the current row crop fields, and any anticipated benefits to the neighbors regarding groundwater runoff and groundwater recharge?
In terms of both of those, per requirements and per the permit to be approved, the condition of the ground, of the stormwater has to either maintain what's existing out there or get better. What I mean by get better, it means it actually has to absorb more water than it's currently absorbing. So the use of the native plants and why it's required as part of the AIMA is that these plants, when you look at a typical farmland, after they get integrated into the soil a year or two, when they actually become more substantial, actually reduce the runoff. And the reason for that is because these plants are there year-round. They actually cover more of the land, so they're able to absorb more of the water. So when crops are up, they could actually, like corn for example, or beans if you're using on those get brought out of the ground. These native plants never come out. So you have full coverage year-round in which it could absorb the water that's coming down.
And you're not doing substantial grading or changes to the way that the current runoff would be managed in your homes?
No.
Will you be using fertilizer or herbicide on the site, broadcast herbicide?
I'll defer to Dylan on that.
So we don't use fertilizers, and the intention with the seed mix is to not use herbicides. I'll say there are some select scenarios where they're required to be used, but our intention with the vegetative management plan that will be supplied prior to building permit is to prevent or to minimize the amount of herbicides, if any.
Are you proposing agrivoltaics as part of this project, or simply just the pollinator plantings?
The pollinator plantings.
Thank you. I want to go to the McDOT memo. We received an updated McDOT memo, and it was like clear as mud to me. But I understand from talking to staff that the updated memo regarding your site plan changes would not require any significant changes to the current design.
Yeah, so we, as a background, we had our access road kind of up here off of Spring Grove Road to begin with. That was the original plan. We have not submitted a driveway application to McDOT yet, but as part of staff review, I think they kind of, as a courtesy, gave us some feedback around what would be required. And what we heard is that because Spring Grove Road is a county highway and Ringwood Road is a township road, if you have access to both of them, you'd be required to connect into the township road. So that's the reason behind the change there. The other issue at hand was pushing back some of the panels along Spring Grove Road. So as a requirement, when there's development across along a county road, there's a certain minimum distance from the center point of the road to the edge of the property, and if that is not in existence, we essentially have to dedicate the remainder of that space to the county for their highway. And so we've done that as part of the revision and the feedback from McDOT, and we pushed the panels. It's here, I think it was about 15 feet that they ended up getting pushed back there to allow for that. And I am aware there's a follow-up memo as well that I think came yesterday or something. I didn't have enough time to go through it in detail and make revisions to this site plan. And again, that's a courtesy as preliminary feedback from McDOT to us, and we fully intend to comply with all of their requirements as part of the actual driveway permit.
You should also mention the limited traffic that this generates.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, on the traffic front, I think the construction portion, which is 4 to 6 months, there'll be maybe 5 trucks a day at max. You're looking at about 35, 40 trucks total coming in. But once the construction is up, you're looking at a 40-year runway where you're having, 5 to 10 cars per year coming in, and that's just lawn maintenance if it's required to cut the grass and make sure it's not going up over top of the panels. But really, the traffic is very minimal compared to almost any other use.
Well, in that same vein, in the 2030 comprehensive plan, part of the first pin of this project calls for retail. And so I just wanted to note that the McHenry Township objected to this proposed facility because it's inconsistent with the agricultural character of the community and will result in construction, traffic, and long-term land use compatibility issues. So if you could more loudly explain the number of vehicles that you're expecting in and out over the course of the 6-month construction period, and how many vehicles thereafter?
Yeah, so I mean, during the 6-month construction period, we're expecting a total of 35 to 40 trucks coming in.
Per day or per
No,
week?
total, over the course of the
6 months.
So, less than 1 per day on average.
And how many worker vehicles is that per day?
That is showing 24 workers total. I don't know that we have a number on it. I will say, because I've had other county Department of Transportation say, it's one of the lowest number of workers. You compare this to anything, residential development construction, retail construction, industrial construction, and those uses. On any of those uses, you're not talking, once you're built, about 5, whatever, vehicles coming in per year. You're talking about hundreds coming in, and in retail, potentially more than hundreds coming in on a daily basis. So one of the real advantages many counties departments have pointed out on this is this type of use has an incredibly low traffic generation compared to almost any other development that there would be, for the benefits that it also brings.
Including the future land use of retail and estate in this area?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I think just one thing I can say from having, I have also represented municipalities on residential development. I think they generally look at between 10 and up on the number of trips that every single house generates per day, and on some it's much more than that. So if you start putting multiple houses here, you can get a sense of, you could be talking about hundreds of trips from a residential development here.
And as part of your McDOT permitting process, they would determine whether this is a minor or major use and whether or not you need a traffic study and how that would change when you can come and go on the site, correct?
Yes, you probably know the McDOT requirements even better than I do, but that's pretty typical. And I will say that I've almost never had to do a traffic study on a community scale solar farm, but obviously if McDOT requires it, we'll do what they require us to do.
Yeah, 5 megawatts don't usually require traffic studies in your experience. Okay, in some of the objection letters we received, there were concerns about wind shear. Is that something that regularly happens on solar farms in Illinois? If panels come loose and fly across the field?
So structurally speaking, it's not anything dissimilar to any other structure built anywhere in the world, in the US. It has to be designed per building code, otherwise it can't be erected. So it wouldn't be any different change than any other different structure ever built in the city.
There are significant building requirements to ensure that these are safe for wind shear.
Yes, absolutely.
Correct.
They have to be designed to, like I said, any city, any structure that's built is got to meet the same standards.
Can you speak to the concerns of the community about the glare from the solar farms as it relates to both their homes and the roadway?
Yeah, so their glare is fairly minimal with solar panels. The panel is designed to absorb sunlight. If the panel is designed to absorb sunlight, and so if there is reflection coming off of it, it's not necessarily doing its job. It's not absorbing that. That said, there is kind of a minimal amount of glare that may come off of these, and as part of that, we use a coating that reduces the amount of glare. So that's on the top surface of the glass that will minimize that. And you also, in addition to that, you have your vegetative buffer around the perimeter of the site anywhere. It's near a roadway so that it should not be impacting any drivers or homes around there.
And that coating is maintained over the life of the project to ensure that, it doesn't come off and then suddenly there's a glare problem down the line. There's requirements to keep up with it.
I mean, I've not heard of it degrading over the course of a panel life cycle.
Okay. Regarding an objection received on October 13th from John and Angela Wormansky, that this proposal violates multiple provisions of the UDO. This question is for Mark. To what extent is the ZBA permitted to consider or make findings related to LaSalle factors in light of Public Act 102-1123?
So the Public Act you referenced, which often referred to as the Illinois Siding Law, very specifically sets out what the requirements are, as your staff report mentions, that you can judge on this. LaSalle standards are not one of those factors. So we believe that the determination by the zoning board should be based on whether or not we are in compliance with your ordinance. Your ordinance, I'm saying it's more for the audience here, but this county and every governmental entity's power to zone in Illinois is granted by the state, in this case pursuant to the Illinois Counties Code. And that act you mentioned is part of the county's code, and it essentially says, if you're going to regulate solar, then you have to regulate it in accordance with these rules. And if they meet the requirements that you've adopted that are in compliance with these rules, then they're to be approved. And so the answer is LaSalle standards were not in there. There's also a requirement that you can't have rules that are more strict than that. And I know that there's been some attempts in places to create new rules. I've actually sat in county boards and they've said, well, I know the law says that you have to have X foot of setback, but we're going to say that you should have had 1,000 or you don't meet LaSalle standards. And the practical answer is that's not what the state law says. The state law sets what are the appropriate standards. Your county ordinance sets what are the appropriate standards. And most importantly, we've met both the counties and the state's requirements.
And just to go back to that, one of the LaSalle factors includes the impact to property values, right?
Yes.
So according to the state law, we're not permitted to consider any impact either way to property values in evaluating a solar farm project.
I would agree with that interpretation. I've actually had a state's attorney in another county when we tried we present the information on property values because we know people have concerns about it. And because we've got the facts there, we present it for their benefit. But I had a state's attorney who stopped our person from testifying about property values. He said, nope, under the state law, we're not allowed to consider that, so we don't want testimony on it. So we try not to create a misunderstanding by putting that information out. And I'll admit, I've had zoning boards look at me and say, Mark, why did we discuss that? And the answer why is because it's a concern people have. And the practical answer is that the facts, the studies are on the side of showing that it's not an issue. So we present that, but I agree with your interpretation and with that state's attorney's interpretation, even though I'm the one who got shut down, that is not part of the factors you're considering.
I want to go back to the slide about job creation, if we could. Under the job creation slide, you explain that you're subject to prevailing wage laws. Does that mean that you hire local union labor to work on these projects?
We work with a general contractor, and we've not chosen them at this point in the process because we're not ready for construction. But they, as much as we can, we encourage them to hire local subcontractors to complete pieces of the property and the construction here. So that often looks like, someone local who has a fencing company or may be able to install the gravel access road or things of that nature. But generally, we work with general contractors who we're comfortable with and who have experience with this, keeping these projects on schedule and on budget. That happens to be a local contractor, then all the better.
Okay. You mentioned that these projects are chosen based on interconnection favorability. What's the status of your interconnection agreement?
So we have gone through a number of different studies with ComEd at this point, and they have presented us a interconnection agreement, and we're just reading through the details, and it's not been executed yet, but it has been presented.
Do you anticipate any local grid improvements as a result of this interconnection agreement?
Yeah, there should be a number of, I think it's, don't quote me, but it's about a mile of reconductoring of the lines along Spring Grove Road running south from the project.
Can you explain what that means for the neighbors?
It's wire replacement. So you have wires that run along the road that go to a substation that are able to distribute power to your homes and throughout the community. And those wires, as a byproduct of this project going onto the grid, will be upgraded and replaced.
And is that at the expense of the community, or is that at your expense?
That is at our expense.
And that's part of the interconnection. So you'll be adding more wires to the local grid and to the homes in the area, improving the integrity of their power lines.
Correct, yeah. I mean, not necessarily out to the homes, but the main wires that run down the street that will branch off to the homes, those main wires will be upgraded as a result of this project and the interconnection agreement.
Going back to some of the objections that we received, there's no danger to any leachability associated with the wires that are underground connecting the panels to the inverters or to the poles. There's no danger of the wires deteriorating or leaching anything into the soil.
Not that we're aware of.
Vegetative screening. So your site plan calls for all new vegetative screening. You're leaving up all of the trees that are existing around the site?
Yeah, that's correct. There's trees. It's not a fully dense wall along the eastern border here, but there are a number of trees there. We're not touching any of those, and then there's kind of a denser forest along the southern part here, and we're leaving that. So as it stands, we don't have any plans to remove any trees.
And how far away is the fence from the property line? Can you just like point to where
Over
the
here?
fence is in relation?
So you have the property line in back here, and then you have the trees are these black circles, and then just in bounds of the trees you have the fence, and then in bounds of the fence you have the solar panels.
Thank you. Noise. How far away is the transformer pad away from the homes? On your narrative report, it says that an inverter is rated at 67 decibels, which is about the volume of a washing machine at 10 meters away.
Yeah, so your washing machine, 10 meters, 30 feet, that's about what you would hear. You got your inverters right there at the equipment pad. The closest home would be right here, and that's, I don't have the dimension there, but it's roughly 400 or 500 feet away with a bunch of solar panels and trees. Based on our studies, there's no reason anyone should expect to hear any humming.
And the inverters don't run at night?
Correct.
So I want to go back to the taxes slide one more time.
Yeah.
It says that the school district taxes, the tax rates you cite as far as like this being 18.5 times more, that's enshrined in Illinois state law. That's not just like something an assessor made up, right?
Correct. I'm just going to speak to that.
Yeah, no, Illinois decided a number of years ago they worked with county and local assessors and determined a single tax rate based on the megawatt, actually the nameplate megawatt power of each of the solar panels. So it's not something that we have any ability to change. It's state law, and that's how it's done. And part of the reason they did it was to ensure that the same rate applied across the state, but the other was to ensure that developers didn't have the ability to go in and try and reduce that rate for their taxes. So what you're looking at here is what's required by state law.
So you couldn't appeal this property tax rate and pay a lower rate. You would only pay a more increased rate based on the levy.
Correct. The law, it's a good point. The law is based on assessment. So just like someone's home, the law determines what the assessment is for the solar farm, and then it's obviously just based on what the rates are. We've done this based on current tax rates. If those rates, I'll say theoretically, without tax person getting upset with me, doubled, then the amount we pay based on our assessment would double. right? It's just, you take your assessment times the rate, with the factors that are going to each county for every property. But yeah, we own, the state law only applies to assessment, and we have nothing to do with what the rates are. The individual taxing bodies, including the county, determine those.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Mr. Schnabel.
Very thorough job by Ms. Beverly on all of her questions, including one of my own. I only have one left, just for the benefit of the audience mainly. A lot of people picture these projects with 7-foot high cyclone fences of the very commercial style. I'm sure you're planning on using the square wire agricultural fence with the wooden posts, or would your plan vary from that idea?
No, that's correct. The agricultural style woven wire fence is what we're intending to install.
And of course, as part of that, there's no lighting whatsoever.
There is no lighting on site.
That's all I've got, thank you.
Ms. Gardner.
Thank you. Now, you are a developer, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And how far into this project does that position go? Do you just find the site and make the site plan and get it through zoning boards, and then you sell it off to somebody?
So those decisions haven't been made just yet. We do it on a project-by-project basis. Every developer does it a little bit different, and Cultivate does it. Evolving Company doesn't have necessarily a one-size-fits-all standard. But yeah, towards once we get through a possible zoning approval and we make our way towards site studies and building permit, we do bring in financing partners to inject an amount of capital to purchase all the equipment to do the installation. And at that point, we evaluate what our options are, and in some cases, we do potentially sell off the project to another developer, and in other cases, we've helped them with ourselves and continue to be the long-term owner-operator.
So for some projects, you've actually done the developing, the construction, and the operation?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, are those in Illinois?
They are in Illinois, yes.
Okay. If you had got to the point where you needed to find another owner-operator for this site, they would be completely bound by whatever testimony takes place today, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. Everything that we're agreeing to here as part of this project and everything that is required from the county would remain with the project, and any future owner would have to abide by that as well.
And if I can add to that, all of the financial assurances, all the requirements of the AMA, all of the other governmental requirements would also apply to anyone else who acquired that property.
And also any conditions that we would put on approval, is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so from that point, let me just say once again, there will be no battery storage on this site, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, would you be amenable to a condition that states that there will not be battery storage on this site, if that's allowed?
Yeah, I think so.
We couldn't do it without your approval anyway. I believe, I haven't looked, I'll tell you how much I know we're not doing battery storage. I haven't even looked at your requirements for battery storage. But I'm assuming that if you have those requirements, if you require special use for a solar farm, you probably would also for battery storage. So the practical answer is we couldn't build that without your approval anyway.
Okay. All right, so let's see, I already answered where the inverters are. When would construction start and end on this project?
So I think depending on the approval timelines and how this whole process goes, I think 2026, towards the end of the construction season, maybe around now, would probably be as soon as it would start.
So like a year from now would be the soonest?
It's possible that we start in 2026. I think there are often delays with these projects. Probably more likely that we'd start in 2027, but I don't want to rule out 2026 if we're able to move quickly.
Okay, and how long will it take to construct and become operating?
It's about a 6-month construction period, but really the pile driving and the installation of the panels is 3 or 4, and the rest of that is just plugging in the wires and commissioning. So, of that 6 months, maybe half of it is kind of the noisy construction that you'd think of.
Yeah. Now, the vegetative screening that you're going to be installing, how close together will these things be? I mean, how much of a screen will this actually be?
Yeah, so we don't have our vegetation plan yet. This is our proposed and, what we've used on some other projects, but generally, I'm not sure if we have a number in there, but generally the evergreen trees here are planted about 5 feet apart, and then the deciduous and the shrubs kind of stagger here in between, but, about 5 feet between the bigger kind of anchor trees.
Okay.
And just adding on to that too, so there will be a landscaping plan as part of their permit process that's going to be submitted. So
Right.
that one also has to be approved along with it.
I know. I just wanted for the audience's sake to know that this was going to be well planned out and thick.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you talked about the panels themselves are gonna be single track or are they bifacial?
Yes, we haven't spec'd the panels, but the vast majority are big bifacial that we're installing these days.
Okay. Can you give me a good description, any of you, of the size of a panel? Like, is it as big as this table?
It's,
Is it smaller?
yeah, I think it's 8 feet by 4 feet. I don't have that offhand, does that sound right to you?
Right.
Yeah, so that's the standard I've seen, which I guess, I'm trying to guess if this is an 8-foot table, but
Okay, yeah, roughly.
probably this is about 3 feet.
So about like a sheet of plywood.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's ambitious for one person to lift it on their own, but 2 men are generally installing them together.
Okay. And how many panels are planned for this site?
About 12,500.
12,500. Okay. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
My colleagues have been so thorough, I have no remaining questions.
Ms. Dunn.
I'm sorry, no, I couldn't possibly come up with anything else that would be of importance. It's really been very well laid out so far in the questions, so I have no more. Thank you.
Mr. Cozen.
Thank you.
He always does.
All right. Probably going from and I appreciate this because each petition stands on its own, and so the record from one is not necessarily available or considered by another. Saying that, the detailed discussion of the AIM, once this project is approved, if approved, and the AIM is also accepted, where can one find the AIM going forward?
So the AMA, the Agricultural Impact Mitigation Agreement, has been signed.
It's already been signed.
And I believe a copy should be on file with the county.
Okay,
So someone, I'll ask the staff, but I presume someone could request a copy.
Yes, correct. Yes, it is available.
and that would be, as best as your understanding, a public record. It wouldn't be commercially prohibited from access, so in 5-10 years, if somebody wanted it, they could either go through the more elaborate FOIA process or the other one, and they would not be denied access to either the record of this hearing, the approval process, or the AIM.
Correct. I mean, I can't speak on behalf of your state's attorney, but I'm not aware of any reason why an AMA or the record of this process would not be public knowledge. I can also say, for those who might want to see it faster than that,
Right.
as I mentioned, not only we, but also the Illinois Department of Agriculture does not allow modifications to that document. And so therefore, if you go online to their website and search for Agricultural Impact Mitigation Agreement Solar, you can pull down what is the required form they do. And I don't want to say for sure because you never know what they did yesterday, but to my knowledge, they haven't modified that form. So what's on there should be the same thing that we signed fairly recently.
Thank you. Then, in terms of how long is the expected duration of the use to be on this property? Again,
We're anticipating 40 years.
40 years. And just to confirm, there's no lighting over this property?
That's correct.
And so then the evening sky to the west should be unchanged for the next 40 years in terms of any artificial lighting, distraction, or it should appear as we see tonight.
Yeah, there should be no change. There will be no lighting.
Is there any effort to wash or clean artificially the panels?
That is not anticipated at this site. There are certain sites, depending on the geographies and in the
Right,
desert.
right, we're not
if they're
talking out
dusty.
west Mojave
But
Desert.
Here, we don't anticipate any
Right. And how is the condition of this site monitored?
It's, so the panels themselves are remotely monitored. So we have a good understanding of each panel and whether they're generating or not, and if there is a malfunction or an anomaly in the data. Generally have someone out on site to take a look at it within 24 hours.
So it's a real-time monitoring then?
Yeah.
And there is no anticipation or reliance on any casual or external observers in that regard, on-premise security personnel?
No, we're not anticipating one.
You mentioned there's an emergency plan. Is that created in a text format? Is it available for review? Can people examine it?
So that has not yet been created, but it is a requirement for the building permit. Run through that.
In terms of
If I could interrupt just 1 second, just
Sure.
for the benefit of viewers and
Yes.
guys. That document is filed with the local emergency responders, and I would assume is therefore, and I'm not an expert at this, but is therefore available through the Freedom of Information Act from any of those governmental entities.
So there's a written rather opposed to some
Yes.
general expectation. In terms of the topography of the site seems relatively flat and I'm reading from a document that was created on October 9th, 2025. It seems relatively flat across the property, running from the southwest Spring Grove Road to Ringwood Road. The reason I bring it up is to attempt to illustrate a question. You say that these panels move. What is that time that it sits at each angle of its movement? Would you anticipate? Does it take a degree, 2 minutes to move a degree? So how long would it take from morning to when it's flat until it's seen again?
I don't know the exact number. I think it's a matter of minutes at each, maybe it's 1 degree at a time, slowly rotating throughout the day.
And then in the evening, it resets itself, I take it, back to an eastern perspective?
Yeah, that's correct.
So how I would see the panels configured in the morning would be different going northbound on Springwood Lane than I would see it in the evening.
Yes, that's correct.
Why did you select movable as opposed to fixed panels?
It's a generation issue. When they're fixed, you only get a certain amount of sunlight in the morning and in the evening, and I believe it's about a 30% increase in the generation capacity if you do choose the tracker panels.
So you're creating more expensive and more proficient facility than would otherwise be created with the fix? Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah, it's higher efficiency and you get more megawatts per acre using trackers.
So that would, in terms of the post depth, what is the general maximum post depth to those arrays?
So typically, they go anywhere from maybe 7 to 10 feet down. We won't know at this point. We actually get a geotechnical report, find out from the soil, and along with, before they're asking about structural, verify the wind conditions and everything else per building code, and then determine the actual depth at that point. So it would be a combination of factors, but it's usually closer to surface, 7 to 10 feet. If it's less, then it's less, but what it is to per code and per conditions that we run into.
Going to the underground utility line, just to confirm, the configuration of the above-ground poles at Spring Grove Road to the interconnect of the ComEd, that is a design imposed upon you by ComEd, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And that is not a design imposed, just to clarify, by the county or the county code? So the visibility of those poles are the results of ComEd's direction to you?
Yeah, they have their requirements for the number of poles and the amount of equipment that can be on each pole.
Then Curiosity playing electrical engineer, which is a dangerous thing given the product. I note that the underground goes in an dogleg direction. Why did you not continue it further to the east and then go due north? And if that's just
Sorry, to the.
right,
Oh,
you
so
show
you
your
mean here?
yes.
Yeah, we ran up, we kicked around some designs and I think, when we get out to site, there's some possible modification that will happen there, but we ran into some trees here that we thought would impact it, and so we didn't want to impact those trees as a part of running the underground line.
And then as to the, am I correct in terms of the conversation with McDOT? You are being asked to dedicate right-of-way?
That is correct.
And could you clarify what dedicated, what that means?
It means that there's additional space here along the road that is being given to the Department of Transportation.
Just expand about who presently owns that property then?
It's currently ours.
So you're
The landowners.
you're conveying property to McHenry County Department of Transportation
Yes.
without compensation?
Yes, it's one of their requirements.
And that also includes the intersection of Ringwood and Spring Grove Road? Does
So
dedication-
again, it's preliminary information. I don't believe we're conveying property up here because our project is not impeding on that corner there, but along Spring Grove Road where our property abuts the road, we'll be conveying property.
And so that when this project is over, that dedication still remains in effect?
That's correct, yeah.
So that in 40 years, whatever would the development be in place, they could likely benefit from the additional right-of-way that you have conveyed at your own expense?
Yes.
In terms of the prairie species that are being planted, my colleagues from time to time have mentioned a county standard, if there is one, or how your selection of those plantings and the source or the design?
So typically, any of those plantings are always gonna be native, and the first thing we do, our landscapers do, is they do consult local codes and verify with those first. So if there is a county one, they will look to ensure that's being specified on it.
I think with the thoroughness of my colleagues, I have no more questions.
I just have one question, and that's regarding the community solar and subscribers. And can you go through like how much the subscribers, say the neighbors around here, they want to subscribe to this? Can you go through the benefits of that for them and how much they'll save on their electricity?
Yeah, so if you want to sign up, you do a quick analysis of your current electrical bills and your monthly consumption, and you get an idea of how much you're already consuming, and then you would sign up for a similar portion of electricity from this community solar field. And then what that would look like is on your electrical bill, you wouldn't be paying the typical generation that you are paying in that section. Instead, you're going to be credited for that amount of generation here. And that number is going to be discounted, and it's roughly 15%. So
Roughly 15% less the subscribers will be paying for their electricity.
for the portion of your generation, or the generation portion of your electricity. It's 3%.
And then as electricity rates go up, it will still be 15% of whatever the rate of the electricity is at the time.
Yeah, that's my understanding, is that you.
We had a solar farm company say that they would be willing to first offer these discounts, because once you're full, you can't provide that discount to other people once it, because some people really want to subscribe to these solar farms to get the benefits of the lower cost of their electricity. And we had one company say that they would be willing to provide that first to the neighbors, within a certain radius of the, like a couple mile radius or something of the solar farm, so that they would be the first ones that could take advantage of this. Is that something that you've ever offered?
That's something that we have offered in the past, and if that's a
And would
request.
you be willing to do that on this project as well?
Yeah, we're able to look into that if that's a request here.
Okay, great. That's the only question I have. Does staff have any questions?
We have no questions.
Okay, at this time, then we'll turn it over to the public. I would like you to line up over here, and then you'll need to state your name, your address, and I'll give you your 3 minutes. I'll use the timer on my phone. And again, this must be regarding the testimony that's been given. And we ask you to not be repetitive. If somebody's already asked the question, follow up with something else. So I'll turn it over to you, sir, please.
Okay, my name is Kenneth Lindy. My wife and I have lived at 4817 Hickory Lane for the past 30 years. And I've got some questions for Mark. Mark, who owns the land?
The property owner is here.
John Joswiak.
John Jogwiak. So is that no longer associated with Hiller Farms? Hiller Farms is across. Oh, this is Hiller Farms right here. This is all Hiller Farms. So
I believe he'll be speaking later, but it's my understanding he's owned it for 20 years, so I don't know who
Okay,
owned it before.
I just, that was one question. I want to somewhat disagree with you about your statements regarding.
You can make a statement later. This is questions.
Okay. Where did you get your information regarding the increased value of homes and property adjacent to solar panels?
So there are multiple, first, one of the documents we filed in the record is a report from Cone Resnick. In that report, and that's available from the county, in that report, they identify multiple multi-state studies that have been done and go through those studies. They have also done their own studies of solar farms in Illinois, Indiana, surrounding areas. And then they also reached out to state's attorneys. I've also reviewed, not at the same level of detail they have, but I've also reviewed many of those national studies.
Okay, now, predicated on that, what form of housing was evaluated? Fixed homes, mobile homes, homes with basements, etc.
To my knowledge, every one of those options were considered.
Okay. Dylan, a couple of questions for you, please. You indicated that the 36 acres would generate $28,868 in tax revenue per year. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, it is. Okay, my question to you is if you took those, based on the 2030 plan, which is still in effect, if you took those 36 acres and turned that into the residential area, wouldn't it generate somewhere around $300,000 per year in property taxes on an average basis of $10,000 for this per house for the same 36 acres?
That's not a calculation that I've made at this time.
Pardon me?
That's not a calculation that I've made at this time. I don't have that information.
Okay.
offhand.
So predicated on,
Part of the answer to that also is, if you look at the census results, there have been 18 new homes between 2010 and 2020 in that town. So you're making the assumption that on the day it was identified as residential, that suddenly all those properties would be built.
Correct.
Also, those properties would be residential and therefore, unlike our project, would have an impact on the taxing bodies, which ours is not.
okay? But you still would see 3 minutes are up, okay, all right.
You can make your
I think-
statement later.
Pardon me?
You'll have 3 minutes later.
I just had
please.
one more question, but if there's other people in line, we'll let them go.
Pass your
Okay.
question on to someone else.
Okay, my question, if somebody would please ask, just what was the setback on Spring Grove Road, what is going to be in terms of how close it's going to be? If somebody can ask that.
Okay, next person, please.
I'm new to this, so do I introduce myself or just dive
Yes,
in?
introduce
Okay.
your name and address.
My name is Angela Bermansky. I live at 5102 Country Springs Drive in Johnsburg in the Country Oak subdivision immediately next to the proposed site. I have a few questions. So I noticed that at the Johnsburg Town Hall meeting last night, you were asked why landscaping screening was not provided on the site plan, kind of that inner corner right here. that spot. Can you, like last night, the answer was that you didn't have to, that it just was not required, you didn't have to. Can you please clarify that for us here?
Yeah, so there's a requirement to provide that vegetative buffer landscaping anywhere where we're 500 feet from any residential home on a non-participating property or any public right-of-way, so the road right-of-way. And so we've got, it's tough to see because it's small writing here, but we do have a 500-foot number there, measurement, that shows how far we are from the right-of-way.
Okay, thank you. Just like homeowners do not make decisions at the board level, teachers often do not make agreements
This is not a statement, this is a question.
No, it's a question. I have a question.
Okay.
I'm trying to establish context so it's not coming out of the blue.
Okay.
Teachers often don't make agreements allowing private for-profit companies working with nonprofits. It sounds like that We Care Solar is a nonprofit. To work with really influential minors. You had mentioned that you had talked with some teachers at Johnsburg High School. Could you let the board know who they were? Do you have the names of who you
So
talked with?
I said I've reached out to them. They've not responded at this point. I am happy to share the names of the folks that I've reached out to.
Do you have any plans in place right now to speak at any of the school board meetings for District 12, Johnsburg High School?
The school board meetings?
Yeah. So, yeah, because teachers, just like the board doesn't,
Statement
we don't make decisions, teachers don't make decisions. A homeowner doesn't make decisions that the board does. You can't just kind of come in and tell teachers,
All right.
do that. Do you have any appointments scheduled with the school board? No, right? Okay.
Would you reach out? I mean, I'm happy to speak to the school board about it.
Yeah, we'd be happy, we don't, typically developers don't speak to the boards that have jurisdiction over the project they're doing, but if, I don't know if you are a teacher or if you're representing that, if you have someone from the school board who would like us to come speak to them, please have them contact us.
I mean, he mentioned that he had talked with like teachers, so I didn't know that was just reaching out to them. I just wanted to kind of clarify the process that usually happens with these types of collaborations. So last night, we had talked about potentially pushing back the border, so where that 150-foot allowance is. I know that, okay.
Just finish your question.
I know that last night you rejected that and said like, no, that's not possible because that would take up where you could make money from the solar panels. Right. Have you put any more thought towards to possibly conceding a little bit? And if there's land allotted for.
Okay, let him answer the question.
Is there land allotted, could we have some land over there?
Okay. So can you have land, is that the question?
Well, no, not that, so like we have that 150-foot buffer, right?
We have that setback included along the eastern boundary.
Would you be open to perhaps providing a little bit more, especially knowing that you have, you've allotted some more land on this side? Would you be able to, could you be able to put it on record to allow more of that, perhaps like 250 feet, 100 feet on this side that's directly connected to homes, residential homes?
Okay, let him answer the question. You're done.
Sorry, okay, I'm sorry, I've never done this before, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's not something that we're able to commit to at this time. We've followed the standards of the ordinance of the state citing law, and once we get farther in the process, if there is a possibility that we have extra space and that we need to shift some panels around, or that we're able to make some adjustments, I'll commit to that being the first place that we'll consider to remove them.
Okay, next person.
Hello, my name's Steve Kresge, 2308 Red Oak Lane. I was the first house in the neighborhood, so I've been there like 25 years. So I have a question about the beams for the solar panels. How many beams would it take to put in 12,000 solar panels? I know we asked you yesterday.
Yeah, and I don't have that information offhand still. I'm happy to follow up with that.
Because I really want to know how the noise would be on my house pounding 12,000 beams into the ground, 10 feet.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say, and we can get you those numbers later on. I'm happy to email them to you, but I'll mention too that the noise is, the construction itself will only occur during certain hours during the day, and that's dictated by the county and won't be happening overnight. So
yeah,
if there is noise.
I'm afraid of vibrations in my house and all the noise pounding pylons down is pretty loud.
You have another question?
I do. The setback on Spring Grove Road, how far would be the setback from Spring Grove Road for panels?
So Spring Grove Road, as we were talking about before, has the right-of-way dedications can be expanded, so we're adding about 15 feet to what the current road you see actually has. And then there's a 50-foot setback from the edge of that right-of-way along here to the edge of the nearest panels, so 50 feet with a vegetative buffer in between.
So could you, not to intersect, could you tell me how many
You
total?
can't answer, you don't have the floor, sir. This,
How many feet would be that
Don't-
from the road?
all right, you can follow the rules or you can leave the meeting. I don't want to have to call security.
And one more question about the easement that is here. Maybe it's a question
Yeah,
for
it's
you guys.
along,
Because that says where the property line is, but I have 2 PIN numbers on my property, which include that easement, so I don't know if that line should be moved over here, which I don't know if it'll have a net effect.
This line is based on the title that the current property owner owns. If you have an easement, and I've not read it, so I'll say that up front. So if you've got an easement on a part of that farmer's property, then your easement remains. But the red line is the property line.
Okay. I don't have further questions.
Next person.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jack Weigert. I live over in Dutch Creek Estates in Johnsburg. My daughter has a house that is right up in here.
that one there.
Okay, that's why I'm here. The questions here, Ken wanted to know the exact dimension of the setback here. I know it's 50, but what is it from the center of the street?
So for the center line of road to the first panel, it'd be 115 feet. So the right of way is 110 feet wide that we're showing on here, so half that is 55.
55.
55 feet, plus the 50 would be another 105 feet total.
And I'm sorry, Paul, does that include the 15-foot additional dedication?
So that is actually, well, the right of way already includes it, which is noted on there, is
Okay, great.
110 feet.
Apologies.
So that would have it in there.
Okay, the question was posed to reduce the size of the solar field to get a little bit more setback. If that is not a possibility,
You're asking him a question.
yes. If that is not a possibility, what about a berm along here and put the trees on the berm, something similar to what they do around gravel fields? Is that an option? Let's say a 6 or 8 foot berm, some trees that are 6 to 7 feet tall. You mentioned you wanted to put a fence up. You mentioned 8-foot fence, you mentioned 7-foot fence, we mentioned a 6-foot fence yesterday. What is the fence height? And how can we buffer all of that in lieu of removing panels? Is that a consideration? Can this be done? Can you guys take a look at that?
We can take a look at it, if it's possible. I think adding a berm adds some amount of complication to the project itself from a stormwater and drainage perspective, and so that, would have to be considered on, from the engineers when we're doing our stormwater planning. We can take a look into it, but that's not typically.
When you have your final plan for all of this, the trees and all of this, is there an opportunity for the homeowners to take a look at that before installation starts, to get some additional input before it's approved?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly when plans become public from the county side of
Yeah,
things.
I can answer that real quick. So once a building permit application is submitted and the plans become, record at the county, you can fill out a freedom of information at any point to see a copy of the plans. You wouldn't have public input like you have right now, but you would be able to see a copy of what they're proposing.
That's afterwards.
During the permitting process or after the building permit and prior to construction.
Yeah, we would like to be able to put some input
You
into
can state it later.
Okay, thank you.
Next person.
Hi there, my name is Emily Grant. My maiden name is Emily Kroll-Hesch. I live at 4608 Spring Grove Road. I'm right on the other side of this field here, so I'm one property removed. As far as I know, none of my neighbors have been contacted by you, Dylan, which would include Karen Tennis, whose property is almost this entirety property here. Anyways, I just wanted to state that before I go here. And I believe that the water runoff comes out the southeast corner of the property and goes along here into a couple ponds that affect our town where fishing derbies are. So my question is, what is gonna happen with the water runoff over 40 years' time, with there being cadmium possibly, or the polymers coming off these panels into the ponds where we have our fishing derbies?
Yeah, no, thanks for that question. I'm not sure, I know your neighbors are not here. I did my best to find some phone numbers. Okay, well, we can speak with them as well when they have their turn. I did make a number of calls and left some voicemails for folks who live here. I can tell you that it's not always the right number that I'm finding, and I didn't get a call back. And on top of that, I did send out some mailers, which I know, some of the other neighbors here definitely got.
Question about water drainage, please?
Well, I'm answering both of your questions, actually.
My question was about water drainage.
Okay, you asked two questions, but there's, so I make an effort to contact your neighbors there. In terms of water drainage, I think we've spoken about it at length already, but right now you have row crops. We're gonna be changing this into a deep-seated, deep-rooted grass that is kind of akin to a meadow. So the actual absorption on the property is expected to increase compared to the current situation right now. And
The other part, you asked about leaching of other chemicals into that. Again, as confirmed by the US EPA, that's not considered to be a risk of these panels. There's no question, there were older panels where those concerns were there, but the newer panels, as you can read from US EPA's website, that's not considered.
And we did not confirm or deny if it would be the newer panels or the older panels that you'd be installing. We just said there possibility of either.
well, no, the panels have not specifically been spec'd, but the type of panels that we use, we confirm, are PV, polysilicon, crystalline silicon. They're not the cadmium panels that you're referring to.
Okay. And then when the panels reset in the evening, how fast is that process? And is there a sound to that?
I'm not exactly sure. I can get that, but it's fairly quick, and I don't believe there's a sound associated. If there is, it's very quick and minimal.
And if I can also mention, as required by the county's code, by the state law, we also have to be in compliance with the Illinois Pollution Control Board's noise requirements. So even if there is any sound generated, we can't violate those requirements.
Can I ask one more question?
You can pass your question on to somebody else to ask. We have to get 3 minutes. Next person.
My name is Joan Brum. I live at 4817 Hickory Road, Johnsbury, Illinois, Springdale Estates. I just want you to clarify, I have just one question. You said that you will sometimes hand off the production to another company, correct? Do you know whether they are going to use cadmium or not in their panels?
So our partners don't typically use that. It's
They
not
don't
really
typically, you don't know.
We can confirm that we're going to be using polysilicon panels.
It's actually been part of the record, and the reason you have a public hearing is stated as part of this record and the basis on which the zoning board will make a recommendation, the county board will vote on this project. will be based on that record. So part of that record is an indication that they're not going to be using those. So you've got that on the public record.
That it will not for sure be using.
For sure, we're not going to be using the cadmium panels. We're using polysilicon.
My name's Renee Weigert. I live at 2307 Red Oak Lane. I've met you several times now. On, 3 different occasions. I've gotten 3 different answers, so I'm going to ask this question one more time. How many solar fields to date has your company completed from start to finish?
Yeah, so thanks Renee. I know we spoke about this last night, and I was able to pull some of the information. So currently there's one project that is operational, and that's in Mercer County at the western side of Illinois. We have two of them that are currently mechanically completed, which means the construction has occurred, the wires have been plugged in, but they're not currently operating. They're going through the system acceptance testing with the utility. So they're, you can call them built, but they're not necessarily operating now, but they're close. And then we have one that is currently starting construction in the coming months here in Kane County.
And why couldn't you state that on day one? You've only been in business, as you told me, for 3
You
years.
asked another question. You can state something later, but
I mean,
you have another question.
I don't have all the information at my fingertips.
Why couldn't you present that?
Sure, I don't have all the information on.
So you couldn't remember, is what you were saying?
No, I'm
How
saying I
many
don't
fields
have that
completed?
information at my fingertips. And so those are not projects that I personally have developed. I'm not as close to them. I work on my other projects.
And how
And you've
many-
asked for that information, and I've gone away
How many of
and
these
come
have
back and
been next to
provided it you.
residential homes?
I don't have that
So
information.
you have one complete project. Is that next to a residential home?
I don't believe that one is next to
You
residential.
have 2 in the works that are not 100% completed. Are those next to residential?
I don't have that information, but I'm happy to follow up with this.
You really don't know your project? Okay, thank you.
Again, they're not my projects, they're other folks at my company who are developing. them.
Okay, next person.
Thank you, Renee.
My name is Tom Cote. I live at 4610 Spring Grove Road. I also was not addressed on this issue. Is there a reason you didn't come and find the people in this little subdivision down here?
Are you able to show me which one, which house is yours?
All the homes that are down here.
This one here?
All the homes that are down here.
Well, okay, so I don't have it up on the map here. Maybe, do I have a zoomed out version? Can you show me which one is yours here?
Where's the portion?
This is the project.
Yeah, all these houses here. There's a road that comes down here.
Along here? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did make phone calls, and I don't believe I may not have had the right number, but I did leave a number of voicemails, and I sent out some mailers, I believe, to the 2 or 3 properties that do border there. So I did make efforts. I apologize if it wasn't your number or if the mail didn't come through, but I know many of the letters I did send out did get to your
Cell
neighbors.
phone numbers, maybe you'll share that with me later. Question I have for you, a number of my questions have already been answered. What benefit, other than income to your company, what benefit do the residents get out of something like this? Can you explain that?
Yeah, well, so you get a big increase 18.5 times on the property taxes that this parcel is paying.
Yeah, other than
to
the taxes.
Your county. Yeah, and you get the opportunity to subscribe to this community solar program. And, if you're a homeowner, I'm assuming you're paying a monthly electrical bill. So the benefit is that you would have an opportunity to subscribe to a portion of that and pay less every month on your electrical bill.
The other benefit, an important one, which is recognized in the county's comprehensive plan, and the county's proposed comprehensive plan, in the state legislation, is the benefit of the fact that we all use electricity. And so how you generate that electricity impacts all of us, and therefore the reason why there's support for clean renewable energy is that it's created without all the adverse impacts of some of the other forms of electricity that can be built. So that's one of the reasons why there's strong support both in the county's plans, in the state's plans, federal government plans for renewable.
And I think you'll agree that adverse that you speak of is opinion too, because there's a visual adversity to these types of solar panel farms?
It's a fair question. The adverse I was talking about is actually the adverse impact of the other forms of electricity like coal, which has obviously significant environmental impacts, nuclear. We've got to generate electricity somehow. And in fact, these days, the demand for electricity is going up exponentially. And so the benefit I'm talking about is, and again, that the county talks about is generating electricity through clean renewable means.
Was that my buzzer?
Yeah.
He filibustered all my time.
Next person.
Hi, my name is Dorothy Martinez. My husband and I own the last lot on Country Springs Drive. And I wonder, did you send mailings out to anyone? Because not having a home or a mailbox there, if you did, could not someone have gone on the Athena map and found out where the homeowner lived and sent us something? Because we knew nothing about this until about a week ago.
Are you able to show me which one is yours?
So first of all, Kim, can you clarify who gets official notice about this hearing?
Yes,
Right here.
everyone that is
The only
directly
thing-
adjacent
This one
to the
Okay,
property.
let staff.
If the neighbors are directly adjacent to the subject property or across the street, that is when you're required to receive notice. It looks like there's properties between yours and the subject property, which is why you would not have received a legal notice from the county.
So then it wouldn't affect it.
Okay, next person, you have a question?
Yes, I'm Valerie Christensen. I'm at 2018 Bryn Mawr Court in Johnsburg, so I'm a subdivision over. My question is a little bit less specific to that, but I'm just wondering how the change in the federal grant structure will impact your business, your financing, the feasibility of this project, the changes that are coming in the next year or two. Is that why the rush is on for this?
Are you talking about the one big beautiful bill that passed?
Well, the changes that are in the works. So I'm just wondering why this is so fast. Because we haven't heard or gotten any discussions or anything. So I'm just wondering how that impacts it, how the grants.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why you think it's fast, but I think, you know, the investment tax credit that's associated with the project is something that we believe we can still get based on when those tax credits will be sunsetting. But that is not, you know, impacting, you know, the speed at which we're developing this project. That is independent.
And so if the project was delayed past that, would the project still be feasible without those grants?
It's possible. I mean, I don't have those numbers up in front of me, but if those tax credits were no longer available, we'd have to reevaluate all the finances around it and see.
So it's dependent on those tax credits, really?
It may be.
It could.
It's possible, yes, but it's possible that the project would continue even if those tax credits were not in existence.
Okay, next person.
Hi, my name's Donald Tennis, and my family has the property at the whole southern border of the project, 4620 North Spring Grove Road.
This one here?
Correct. So just one simple question. I know that residential solar panels, I have heard, are good for about 20 years or so. And I'm sure that your commercial may be different, but what is the useful life of one of these 4x8 panels? It's a 40-year project. Do you anticipate changing all these out through the course, or is one panel going to last the 40 years? How much maintenance, how much in and out will be?
Yeah, good. It's a good question. You know, we hope that the panels are going to last 40 years. There is a slight degradation that occurs. So, you know, at year one, they're operating and generating at the max, and you know, there's a nominal percentage every year that they will reduce the amount of output. There are a number of panels that, you know, just based on the sheer number of them, that will fail or you know, not operate up to standards along the way. And it's the beauty of this, it's modular. You're able to come, pull it out, and replace it. But the majority of them we're hoping are gonna last 40 years with a little bit of degradation.
Okay. Are there manufacturer, I know you haven't spec'd the panels yet, but do the manufacturers give a useful life of them? I know you're hoping that they'll go 40 years, but are they spec'd at a certain?
Yeah, that's what they anticipate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ryan Hiller. I live at 4809 Spring Grove Road. Couple quick questions. So the company you work for is Water Locust, correct?
The company is called Cultivate Power, and the project is called Water Locust Solar. It's set up as an LLC.
Okay, so Water Locust is the shell company, perfect. So when Water Locust inevitably shuts its doors in a few years' time, will the parent company then come in and assume all responsibilities when it comes to decommissioning the plant down the road, or is that going to be passed on to the homeowners and tax-paying citizens of the community?
If I could, it's a very good question. And one of the reasons they created that AMO we've been talking about is to ensure that that's not an issue. The answer is...
The little LLC is the issue. You're not doing it with the parent organization. You created a shell company, so your parent organization has no liability. That's the issue.
As with most developments, there is a development entity that runs this. That development entity will own a this is not a pure shell corporation, it's going to own a very expensive asset. Shell corporations typically own nothing. This development entity will own a very expensive asset, but whether they're there, whether they assign it to someone else, or whether anything that happens there, so whoever's operating is obligated.
So the question that I asked, though, when Water Locust fails, or shuts their doors, and the parent organization, are they then responsible for disposing of everything and cleaning up the plant when everything is done?
Whoever owns the project would be responsible, and if they don't have the assets, whoever owns them, that's why you have financial assurance pursuant to the AMA and pursuant to your code.
So it goes
so
back
that
to
can be done.
taxpayers?
No. Financial assurance, made us that clear. Financial assurance is typically a letter of credit or a bond, which is created in order to make sure to pay for all that decommissioning. And it actually has, you have to regularly throughout the process, work with the county to make sure that there's enough money in there to cover it. So if costs increase or decrease, that bond can change. That money, that security is held by the county, so that if for some reason this development entity did not do the work, the county could do it.
Okay, and then how often are soil samples taken, tested for? I know you said cadmium isn't really a worry to you guys. It is to me, but cadmium, lead, mercury, and everything else that goes inside of these, how often are the soil tested?
I want to correct something you said there. We never said cadmium isn't a worry. We're not using the panels that have cadmium. Right, so therefore.
It's not a worry because you're not using the panels. So, but
What I'm
there's
saying
other
is,
hazardous chemicals in there. So how, regardless of that, how often are soil sampling going to be taken, water sampling, all that, to ensure there's not degradation of the soil and water in our area from failure of?
So the county itself actually has, I think, 32 or 34 monitoring wells. So they have testing, I believe, is done regularly, yearly, that always has that information. So as a part of any kind of jurisdiction.
Monitoring wells for
Your time is up,
well,
sir.
not for soil. I'm still waiting for them to answer the question.
Monitoring wells are for anything goes in an aquifer to make sure there's nothing going into it. So that actually gives you a measurement of what's in the soil, because you typically whatever's in the soil is going to get into the water system. So any kind of place that has water or kind of well systems, there's always separate monitoring wells. So the community is always ensure that the quality of the water is a sufficient level of movement levels. So that's already being done as a normal level by the county and the city.
But that still says nothing about the
Okay,
soil.
he answered your question, your time
What's
is up.
the lie? So, I work in water.
Next
handle
person.
monitoring wells. I know that's a great lie.
Hi, Jay Goldberg. I live at 2217 Red Oak, right next to your name. Just moved in a few months ago. I just had a quick two-parter question about the subscriptions that are available. Two-part is, at what point in the project are the subscriptions then made allowed to the public or made available to us? And then two, what does that transaction look like? Are we paying for this, or are we submitting our information that then makes its way to third parties, or how does that work?
the state establishes the requirements for when it happens and how it happens. I will admit to you, I don't know when in the process that occurs. Clearly, it's at some point prior to commercial operation because you want to sell that power before then. And I know that under the state law, there are requirements about the amount of notice you have to give, et cetera, et cetera. I will admit, I don't know if the staff knows, but I do not know what the specific dates are. If you want to reach out to me after this, I have regulatory people in my office who could get me the exact information. I just don't know off the top of my head.
Sorry, is that about signing up?
Yes, I
So,
know.
yeah, so I've actually done it myself. You do it all online. I'm not sure exactly how you pay your electrical bills, but if you do it online, you have a comment portal that you go in to pay every month, and there's little drop-down options to subscribe to solar projects there.
Okay, but it's not like an additional cost that I'm paying for subscription to then get a discount?
No, in fact, a lot of these community solar projects actually give you a certain benefit. They'll give you like a $100 visa to sign up, things of that nature.
Thank you, that's all.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, one more, because we're all waiting for a bathroom break.
Lene, I have a follow-up question, but we can take our break and then do that.
Okay.
Jim Mullins, I live on Country Springs Drive, right next to the field. Couple of quick questions. These panels, you said they're on a single pole?
Single axis tracker.
Single axis track. Okay, and they will rotate during the day. So if there was a heavy storm coming in and we had storm warnings or tornado warnings, would these panels automatically lay flat, or would they still be tilted up at the angle that they were at prior to the storm hitting?
Yeah, so the actual racking has not been chosen yet, but each racking manufacturer has a position that these are intended to fail safe into, and generally that means to lay flat.
So they would automatically go flat in the event of maybe a tornado siren that was sounded or something to that nature?
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Just to tag on to that, just real quick, from a structural aspect, when actually they're designing the support system itself, the designs are gonna actually take the worst case scenario.
Okay.
So it's gonna take them when it's straight up, and that's how the pole and the system's actually gonna be designed, because they're always gonna look at the worst case to engineer before they have to sign off.
Yeah, I just been out there with some straight line winds.
No, I agree with you, yes.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
crazy. And they said that there's no adverse chemicals coming off of these, but I'm gonna have to guess myself, and I'm not the sharpest tack, but if one of these catches fire, there's gonna be plastic in there, there's gonna be copper, there's gonna be wires with coating, and this could leach out bad stuff into the ground from that panel burning. Is that not correct, or is that correct?
So whatever's on it in terms of being on fire is anything different than what a house or anything else would be in terms of these fires. These panels, for the most part, is enclosed, is captured. The wiring in it does have a little bit of does have the coating on it that is plastic, that is flammable to your point.
Right.
But it's a very small amount.
Okay.
Really compared to the whole design of it, it's probably, I'm guessing, less than 1%. So to your point, yeah, there is a certain degree, but I mean, just anything else there is.
Will we have a emergency contact number that I will be able to call living right next to this? So if I see something go wrong, I notify you and then you notify the fire department, or do I notify the fire department?
I would say, and I'll let the county, my assumption is if there's actually an emergency, you should always call the fire department or 911 or whatever that system is. Both our emergency plan that we file has contact information, and I believe, have not looked at this county's standard requirements, but most emergency plans I've seen, they require that there be a number on the signage on the project.
Okay, well, I just would want to have that. And plus, you did say that the fire department will receive special training to handle these type of events?
If they request it, we generally provide it.
Okay.
But yeah,
Well, let's hope Johnsburg does that. And the other thing that you said is that you reached out to the high school and that you offered that we could actually see a panel. The kids could see a panel. That you would take a panel in there and they could play with it or see it, or did I misunderstand that?
So I was talking about the We Share Solar program. I said I reached out to some high
Is there any chance
teachers
we
to
can see a
engage.
panel? Close up and maybe opened up so we know what's inside one of these? Can we have like a show and tell day?
Okay, time's up. Answer.
If you reach out to me afterwards, there are local colleges in
Yeah, I would like
Illinois
to see it.
that have renewable energy programs. Where they may well have that. Give me a phone number, I'd be happy to.
I'd be happy to give it to you.
MCC does.
Yeah. I would want to see that, wouldn't you? If you're living right next to this thing, this big thing, you want to see that.
MCC has them.
MCC has it, okay, great.
Okay, this is our last question, and then we're gonna take a break.
Hello, my name is Justin Wagner. I live on 2307 Red Oak Lane. And I have a question. You said the wire, if it caught on fire, could leach chemicals into the air. So if you have 2,600 panels, all very little amounts, that adds up to a whole bunch. That's a health concern, correct?
In terms of that actually happening, is extremely low, because I don't think you're gonna see, that would cause basically this entire thing to go up in flames. So the percentage of plastic itself is very minimal on the side of it, where the flame's actually gonna be at. So the chances of it spreading are very minimal. In fact, you would never want to get that because this whole property to the east, it would almost be like a wildfire, if in that kind of condition. So that is very extremely unlikely to happen. I have never ever seen a case of that happen in this regard. And that's why the fire protection plan is in place, is to ensure things like that don't happen. I believe we were discussing before, part of this is actually walking through with the fire department, what exactly that plan is, how to attack it. And Dylan even mentioned before, and part of that is having that buffer, that 10 feet, I think Dylan said. So fire trucks get around the perimeter. So if there is a fire, they have access to be able to get into there, to extinguish things like that very quickly and appropriately with that.
But is the chemical leaching from the wire in that big amount bad to breathe in?
It's like any other kind of fire would be. So it'd be any kind of fire that would hit a house or anything else. It's the same typical kind of fire. Anything like that, you want to put out right away. The whole intention is of the plant itself is to minimize any kind of fire in the event that it ever did happen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good question.
Okay, so we're going to take a 5-minute break. This building closes at 4:30. We need to be out of here by 4:30. I'd like to finish our hearing by that time, if possible.
I just had two quick follow-up questions, if I might be recognized before we move on to staff report.
Certainly.
Thank you. Illinois is a little bit late to the game on solar, and I wanted to get back to the conversation about bankruptcy. I'm assuming there's a provision in your lease about discharge in bankruptcy, and that these are valuable assets in bankruptcy. We're not seeing tons of these sitting around vacant and decommissioned in Illinois, are you?
No, these are, it's a $7 million project. Both the finance people, development people, all want to make sure it's protected no matter what happens.
Right, and in Texas, where they've had solar for years, they're not also seeing tons of vacant solar farms that the company goes bankrupt and they tear them down or leave them up.
Certainly not to my knowledge, and I've done an awful lot of solar and wind farms across the United States. So not aware, these are very large assets, so there's not something that someone just walks away from. And by the way, one of the most important things is the money is up front, right? The money is building and having it there. The reason it's called renewable energy is because you don't pay for the sun, right? So therefore, once it's built, there's an incredible incentive to keep it running because you've already spent the money.
Correct, and you're beholden to the provisions of your lease, which presumably include land management practices as well as the AMA and the landowner themselves. They have legal protections for their land as well.
Yes, I will say that I have not negotiated or drafted this lease, but first the AMA protects them, and every other lease I've seen included for this client has those types of provisions. I apologize, I wasn't involved.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to clarify that that's part of the legal process of developing a solar farm. The other question I had that wasn't expressly clear when we were answering questions about subscriptions, could you please clarify, is subscription an elective process or will the neighbors be automatically subscribed?
Oh, absolutely an elective process.
They have to go online and subscribe themselves and read all of the things?
And to be clear, I think I know what you mean, they're not required to, but if they choose to, then they would have to go through that process.
Thank you. And as far as the fire protection plan in place, it's not often or ever in my knowledge that the entire solar field catches on fire. There's fail-safes in place where if there is an incident, you're able to shut off nearby panels or you're able to shut off a row remotely to assess what's going on prior to a conflagration.
So as part of the remote monitoring system, they can shut off things remotely.
Okay. And so if you noticed a problem, you would be able to shut off and have someone come out and check it out?
There is both two different shutoffs. There's actually a shut-off remote, and there's also a shut-off, I believe, on site. So it can be done in either manner.
Well, and there's a ComEd shut-off as well. Can you please explain that process where if there's a problem and you have to shut down the whole site, you're able to do that through a switch process with ComEd?
So that I'm not as familiar with, so I can't describe the exact process, but yeah, ComEd typically has any kind of circuit they can shut down. But they would know the exact process in determining that, how to go about that.
Okay, thank you, that's all I had.
We'll move on to testimony from the public, starting with the staff. Charlotte, please.
Okay, so the subject property is zoned A1 agricultural district. All of the surrounding zoning in the county is also A1 agricultural district, with the exception of one parcel of A2 agricultural to the west, and then the boundaries of the village of Johnsburg is to the east. The current land use of the subject property is agricultural, as well as all surrounding land uses in the county, and then in the village of Johnsburg, it is single-family residential to the east. The future land use designation of the subject property is majority estate with retail designated at the near the intersection of Ringwood and Spring Grove Roads. We've pretty much gone over everything. I did go out to the site. The necessary zoning signs were posted. I believe that all of the county and state regulations have been met for the minimum siting standard requirements. And then as well, we did receive an updated memo from the McHenry County Division of Transportation. They've asked that it be read into the record.
We did pass it along, so
Yes.
everyone has had
Everybody's
the
read it, so are
opportunity.
you okay with incorporating this into the testimony?
Yes, so we will incorporate that into the.
5 pages, I
testimony.
appreciate that.
Yes.
And that's all I had.
And as well, I want to acknowledge that we received 20 written protests against the petition here today, signed by various members of the public. That's new, that we had not received an email. So any members of the boards have questions for staff? Yes.
Thanks. Kim, I'm sorry to go to the way back machine. When we were negotiating our UDO and we were talking about screening, we didn't specifically include a provision on berms for screening pursuant to 102.1123K1 because we're not permitted to, right?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, but I know that it would have definite impacts on the stormwater management on the property, potentially impacting runoff, and normally these sites are not including any types of grade changes, so that would definitely be an impact that would have to pass through the stormwater management ordinance.
Yes, and it says that we can.
Okay.
But also,
Okay.
also we found in the past that when we've required berms on these sites, the screening has failed because of the watering issues and because of the grading changes, and it's created problems with flooding, right?
I would believe that, yes.
Okay, thanks, that's all I had.
And I would just ask Kim, so as part of the ag impact mitigation agreement, everything, there's with the state, there's things with drainage and replacing drain tile, and can you just go over a little bit of what our stormwater management plan does?
Sure. Yeah, so at the time of building permit application, the applicants are required to submit a drain tile survey. But in addition to that, if any drain tiles are impacted during development, they have to be repaired or replaced immediately, per the requirements of the AMA. And then through the stormwater management review of the building permit application, they will also be looking at any wetland delineations that are submitted, and then making sure that all aspects of the project are compliant with the stormwater management ordinance.
Okay, and then just to confirm, do you believe they've met the state standards for siting?
I do.
Okay, at this time, we'll take statements on the by members of the public. Again, you need to give your name and address, and you'll be allowed 3 minutes. So anybody like to make a statement? Line up here on my right. I want to try and get through as quickly as possible so we can conclude this hearing.
Good afternoon. Again, I'm Ryan Pillar. I live at 4809 Spring Grove Road. First, to answer the question that I asked for soil samples after construction is complete, the answer to that is 0. They take 0 soil samples afterwards. So today I'm here in opposition to the proposed solar farm at the corner of Spring Grove Road and Ringwood Road. Solar energy is advertised as the power of the future, but large utility scale solar farms can also create serious and often overlooked harms that communities must weigh carefully. First, there's a real risk to water and soil. Solar panels are associated infrastructure can introduce heavy metals and other contaminants into the environment during manufacture, operation, and end-of-life disposals. Regulators warn that panels and panel waste can leach hazardous metals like lead, cadmium, and mercury that threaten groundwater and drinking water safety. A lot of our community members are on private wells and will be directly affected by this.
Yes.
Closely tied to it are the risks to surrounding soils and vegetation. Large arrays change surface runoff patterns, compact soils during construction, and alter plant communities under and around the panels. It also suffers, wildlife also suffers. Conversion of open land to panel farm field fragments. Habitat alters microclimates and has been linked to higher bird and bat mortality around installations. The increased heat and reflection from solar panels is responsible for killing thousands of birds per site per year. Scientific review documented habitat loss, altered food webs, and measurable impacts on fauna when projects are poorly sited and managed. Local farmers and landowners often face profound consequences. Utility scale projects have converted prime farmland in many regions, sometimes removing productive acres from food production and disrupting farm operations and rural livelihoods. In some areas, a sizable share of solar development has occurred on prime agricultural soil, which is also happening in our area. That's about all I got.
Thank you.
Next person.
Joan Bloom, 4817 Hickory Way, Johnsburg, Illinois, Springdale Estates. I'm opposing on the issue of the human side of this. Is being placed on farmland, and there's the effects to the community of Johnsburg, the watershed that runs through into the Fox River, and the children that it can affect. There is a main underground watershed system, as you can see in the pictures that they've showed, that runs through Johnsburg to the river. A natural springs and the first pond sit very close to where the site is going to be, and it is also where the Johnsburg fishing pond is, and is used, and I see children playing there and fishing regularly. As noted by the Johnsburg trustee at a recent town meeting, there's a significant gradient from the top of the land in question to the pond area and the watershed area. The National Institute of Health has published a study indicating that only strategically placed solar farms can be safe in an area away from watersheds. Through the excavating process and the slow deterioration of solar products, it leads to runoff, as the person who just was up here said, of numerous metals, especially lead and cadmium, which he's assuring us that we won't have. But the National Institute recommends that solar panels not be placed in these types of areas. The effect will be detrimental to children who use our ponds. Childhood lead exposure causes learning problems and other minerals that can cause learning disabilities, ADHD, and if early exposure, have cognitive delays. This is a startup company that has existed for 2 years. We know it's going to be probably passed on. Who knows how long the company will exist, since there's no tenure to prove its longevity in caring for corroded or solid systems. Thank you for listening to my concerns.
Again, my name is Renee Weigert. I live at 2307 Red Oak Lane. I border this property. I look out at this property from my kitchen windows. This is the land that we're trying to rezone here. This is what I propose this land is going to look like during construction. Whoops, sorry. During construction, after construction, after our windstorms, our hailstorms, our microbursts, our lightning strikes. They happen. I've lived there for 19 years. I got struck by lightning during COVID. I had over $100,000 in damage. This is not a site for a solar farm, and I am warning this. I stand in front of you today with these two posters, one illustrating the land that it looks like today, and one representing what it will look like if the solar field is approved. I am not against renewable energy. I am against the location near residential homes. There are no long-term studies to prove that these massive solar sites are safe in such close proximity to living areas. Our community should not be the experiment. The health risks from EMFs and sound frequencies are real. And the problem, it's too early to identify the outcome of long-term effects. I've had the opportunity to speak with Dylan and Paul from Cultivate Power, and here's what I learned. They know very little about the land, the equipment they plan to install, the risks it poses to nearby homes. From the easements and the drainage to the local weather conditions, like I mentioned, heavy winds, microbursts, lightning strikes, which all create risks. Their famous words are, can't comment, this should, Our intention, it's possible, we hope, everything they state is preliminary. No guarantees, no certainties. Cultivate Power has been around for 3 years, and up until this day, they couldn't confirm how many projects they have completed to date. One must ask why. Here's the reality. We are risking our precious farmland for short-term financial gains. Our health is our greatest wealth. That is what I believe. I urge McHenry County Board to challenge every stage of this permit process. Ask the hard questions and require a full can't even speak. This is so hard for me. Environmental assessment and all feasibility studies before approving this conditional use to protect our land, our community, and our public health before it's too late. And I request to be notified on any hearing from this part forward.
Okay, next person.
My name is Justin. I live on 2307 Red Oak Lane. I live next to the land in question. I'm here because I'm concerned about the proposal solar field being built so close to my house. While I know solar energy can be helpful, building it right next to our neighborhood will change our community in ways that matter to all of us. It could lower our property values, block natural views, and take away open spaces where wildlife lives. I worry about the noise, the safety, and the long-term effects on our land as panels break down or become damaged, leaching heavy metals into the soil or into our water wells. My neighborhood is more than just land. It's where I grew up, where I play and make memories. I'm asking the council to consider moving the solar farm somewhere it won't hurt our homes, our environment, or our community. Thank you for listening.
Next person.
Hi, I was here before. My name is Jack Weigert. I live at 4115 Farmington in Johnsburg. I have to nitpick through my report. Much of this information has already been addressed. But what has not been addressed yet, except just for now, that I want to voice my support for the property owners who are asking you, the board, not to approve this solar field that is being planned on fertile farmland right next to a residential area. That's 33 acres of solar field that shouldn't be there. Common sense tells us the solar field will diminish and decrease property values. There are pros and cons on all of this, of course. They can cause health issues. Again, pros and cons. The site is not compatible with existing or future development that may happen in this area. These commercial farms have a negative impact on all the residential areas, mainly due to aesthetics and environmental impact. The main reason is the view, the change of view. Think about it. You have these massive panels, these big fields. Go take a look at them. They are ugly as hell. I know they generate electricity, and we need those. But do we need them right next to a residential area? I don't think so. There are environmental impacts on this. Okay, the footprint in this place, wildlife, disrupt habitats. You can get these panels absorb more sunlight. They can increase the local temperatures. They can alter soil temperature and moisture. Construction can cause soil compaction, soil erosion, alter drainage, increase runoff, with potential contamination from chemicals and sediments going into the drinking water into these various areas. if we lose, it's the other side of the coin, we as the homeowners request per record here that we receive the following information. We would like to see McHenry County perform an EMF and glare test by an independent firm before and after installation. We feel that the current bonding requirement of $490,000 is inadequate. That should be reviewed again by the board.
Your time is up, sir.
Thank you.
This person.
Hi, my name is Angela Romansky, and I live at Country Springs Drive, directly downhill from the proposed site. I am submitting goodie bags, some photos and exhibits. I wanted to just show you some of the real life that exists here. I support responsible renewable energy, but this project is being placed on land that simply cannot sustain it. And your own county data proves that. We understand the pressure that you're under, but Public Act 102-1121 states that approval is only mandatory if the project complies with all local and state standards. The McHenry County Unified Development Ordinance, that UDO, section 16.200040E, sets those standards. The evidence in your own record shows that this proposal fails multiple required standards. First, the Natural Resources Informational Report, Aquifer Sensitivity Map on pages 12 and 14, or 13 and 14 of that big agenda packet. It's like 500 pages. I'm being serious. It's that I want you to see it. It classifies over 40 acres, roughly 80% of this site, from soil surface down to bedrock, as A2 and A5 geology, which is defined as, both of those are defined as having high aquifer contamination potential. That means contaminants can travel directly into groundwater. The report, your report, also identifies highly leachable surface soils, which allow pollutants to move quickly from the surface to the water table. The data is parcel specific to this location, not a broad map. And those findings make it impossible to satisfy UDO standard number 10, which is on the county board site, which requires adequate measures to be taken to protect groundwater recharge and quality. They also fail standard number 3, which requires that the use will not endanger the public health or safety of the neighboring vicinity. We are the neighboring vicinity. Along with standard number 9, also that is not in agreement, which requires the use to be reasonably in the interest of public welfare. All of us in Country Oaks are on private wells. We're literally downhill from this. And with over 12,450 panels scheduled, we are not sure what could happen. And if this does pass, we beg you to please put very, very stringent financial policies in place, possibly money in escrow, so that later, like in the California site where this project defunct after 8 years, we want a security that we're going to be okay. You're the final safeguard for our health, our wells, our children, and our community. Please deny this permit and at minimum, raise the bar high enough that our groundwater is never at the price of industrial energy. However, if you feel you must approve this project, it's your duty to make it safe and compliant to the highest local standards. We're asking you to protect our homes, our welfare, and our water. Thank you.
Time it.
That's right. I just wanted to give Jack a chance to finish here. So basically, we don't feel that the $490,000 is going to be enough to start that bond for decommissioning. We love assurances from the county to provide real estate tax relief for properties that have suffered a loss of value, pursuant to a recent Virginia Tech study that surveyed 9 million real estate transactions and about 3,700 photovoltaic farms, and documented a 4.8% decrease in overall property value for anybody adjacent to those farms. Funds should be set aside for compensation related to that. More and larger trees equal to the full height of the fence should be installed along with additional vegetation to block out the view. In addition, that each owner receives a bi-weekly update as to the status of this project, requested changes, additions, and deletions since we're going to be directly impacted by pretty much everything that happens on this site for at least the first 6 months to a year. And again, I urge the board not to approve this solar installation next to our residential community. I, for one, am a huge proponent of renewable energies, and the best way we can do them, the safest way possible. I don't feel that it's necessary. It was really hard to look at that, the color graph with the land and then all the properties right next to it and nothing else. And so that's, it just really strikes home to me that this is not the place that I really wanted my kids to grow up in. We just moved in 6 months ago, so we're kind of stuck. But I really appreciate your time, and hopefully you consider this.
Next person.
I'm Jim Stevens. I live on Spring Grove, or Country Springs Drive, sorry. My question is,
No, it's a statement, it's a statement
it's a
right now.
statement. Would any of you people buy a house where we live, if they put that in? Ask yourself that question, it's very easy. I don't think so. And if this owner of the property thinks this is such a great idea and nothing is gonna go wrong, why doesn't he build his house right in the middle of it and then see how safe it is? And if he agrees to it, I'll guarantee you right now, the owner of that land does not live by one of these farms. And that's all I have to say is, just think. You guys, would you buy a house next to one of those? I doubt it, because I know I wouldn't. But this owner thinks it's so great, make him build his house in the center of his field and see how he likes it. But it's all safe, it's all good. It's a money grab for an owner.
Once again, Tom Cote, 4610 Spring Grove Road. Mine is kind of a personal statement here. When I moved out to McHenry County as a high schooler 40-some years ago, Johnsburg and McHenry County was the middle of nowhere. It's not anymore. And certainly by what you can see by the pictures shown here, how close the residential homes are to this. I'm sure if I asked the question to these fellows sitting here, if they'd like to see this thing as they drove by it every day, they'd say, sure, no problem. It's gonna be covered, it's gonna have green trees around it. I think we all know what the real answer is. And I don't think anybody in this board would like to sit or drive by this every time you leave your house to go to work or take your kids to school. This is blight on the property that we call home. It's no longer in the middle of nowhere. Johnsburg was this little bitty town back in the day. It's not anymore. There's plenty of in the middle of nowhere in McHenry County. Go find one of those places.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Thanks for coming out, everybody. Appreciate your time. I just want to let you guys know, we are...
Name and address again.
Pardon me?
Your name and address.
Oh, Jim Rollins, Country Springs Drive. I still live there. I'm not moving. I'm staying there. We're not opposed to it. We just want to make sure that we're looking at all angles of this and studying everything. The McHenry Lake County Soil Want, Kim, thanks for putting this on the website. If you go to page 25 and you read about the anchors, now, Dylan, we're putting anchors on these posts to hold them in the ground, right? These pylons that are driven in are made out of cast iron. I asked that question last night. Correct? I asked that question.
You're making a statement.
The study that McHenry County used to validate that these things were okay is from 1962. And it's right there on the lower right-hand corner. And then if you turn to page 10 of the geological information, it states that the geographical limitations of potential for contaminating shallow aquifers to mirror her and them is highly possible in this whole area. I happen to be a water well driller for a while. Our wells are at 75 foot. These posts are going to go in the ground. They're not sure yet, maybe 10, maybe 20 foot. They will act as candle wicks of carrying contaminants into the ground. Much farther than a corn stalk root would go, much farther than a beanstalk root would go. All I'm asking, guys, is read this report. There's so many things in here that kind of like make it that are variables. I mean, I've seen that field flood, and according to your report, they say that flooding is not really possible on that lot. I've seen it flood. I've been there for 25 years. All I'm saying is just do the work, look into it deeply. To use his words earlier today, don't do a 30,000-foot flyover. Dig down into this. Where does the water drain off? Where is it going to go through these rivers and creeks and neighborhoods and in the Fox River? Keep in mind, McHenry does not get Lake Michigan water. All the water that comes to the people in McHenry come out of wells. That's all I ask. Thanks. Have a great evening.
Anybody else? Okay, do you have a closing statement?
I do. I'm going to try and make it brief, but there's a lot of information to respond to real quick. So I'm going to do this quickly and hit things, but obviously we can give more information at any if you want. As I said to begin with, as your staff confirmed, our obligation is to meet your code requirements. Our application works through each of those requirements. We have not heard, the only comments here on not meeting those requirements are not the requirements in your solar farm. They're the development ordinance, other requirements. So also we believe we're in compliance with those. We have agreed. There were a lot of discussions about wildlife, et cetera, here. It is true, agricultural activity disrupts animals. Building homes here disrupts animals. Building retail here disrupts animals. One of the things that has the least impact is a use that sits there for 40 years with wildflowers that are actually pollinator plants, et cetera. So if that's really the issue, then I think that's already been addressed. But to be very clear, IDNR makes recommendations, but we have committed to, and you require us to, I shouldn't say you require us, one of the conditions from staff that if the county approves it, is that we be required to meet all of those IDNR conditions, and we are certainly in agreement to do that. On the questions of property values, I think you've already heard, and again, I recognize the concerns, of the unknown, but a couple of things that were raised. One was the concerns about people who don't want to live there. That Berkeley study that was mentioned, Berkeley did a follow-up study to it. They did an opinion survey. And of property owners within 3 miles of solar farms, they found that positive attitudes, once the solar farms were built, outnumbered negative attitudes from the people who live within 3 miles on a 3-to-1 basis. That's that same Berkeley study that's being quoted to you. The Virginia Tech study, as is always the case, these are huge studies. It's easy to come up with one or two things in there, but in section 1.2, it says large-scale solar photovoltaic sites of larger than medium scale have virtually zero effect on land value. It says it has zero effect on large homes. And figure 4 in that document, when we talk about the Midwest, specifically says that there's an increase in residential home value in the Midwest. So yes, there are quotes in there that can be pulled out, but that's what the study says and shows that those aren't issues yet. On the decommissioning plan, it may have been unclear in our statement, and I recognize you know this and the staff does, but for everyone who's here, we don't get to decide how much that financial assurance is. Part of, we have to work with the county, we have to justify what that financial assurance is. There are requirements for it in the AMA, and we have to meet that dollar amount. That's how that financial assurance is set, and that's how they confirm that there's an adequate amount there. I think that one of the issues that's here is comes down to what's in the Siting Act. Just a few things in there. Section J5 of that Siting Act that we talked about, section 5-12020, we've all talked about, is a requirement for us to submit a farmland drainage plan. That's in addition to our requirements to meet your county stormwater issues. So unlike the current use that's out there, which is typical of all agricultural uses, we actually have obligations to maintain that stormwater and to have it there. And I should say there was some question here about asking the county to require a financial guarantee. You should know that the state looked at that issue. I assume the county may have as well when they adopt their ordinance. But the state specifically prohibits financial guarantees and confirmed they're not allowed, having looked at all the evidence that's out there. Let me make sure I've got just a few other things here. There's discussion of higher bird and bat mentality and thousands of birds being impacted. Even though that's been addressed in wind farms, I've never heard that as an issue on solar panels, and I've read an awful lot of studies related to solar panels. If there were an issue for that, IDNR would have identified it, would have made requirements that are there, and they have not. In terms of health effects, I want to be clear again that it's always a problem with researching things on the internet. We can't talk about what older panels might have done, what their issues are. You've heard from us based on US EPA, based on our engineer's testimony, based on the actual construction of these panels, why there is no adverse impact, no concern about these leaching into the ground. And make sure I've got everything on this. Oh, and in part that's because of that lack of metals that are not in there. I think to go back again, to not lose sight of what really we're looking at here, which is we have an existing piece of property, we have a landowner who wants his property to be used for this purpose, and we have a lot of respect for landowner rights for what they can do with their property, but we also look at what your comprehensive plan says, what your future comprehensive plan currently identifies, what the state's plans say, all of which is that the solar projects are beneficial not only to the community, not only to the taxing bodies that serve that community and allow them to serve them better, but also to all of us, because what they do is they actually reduce the amount of chemicals that go into the air, go into the ground, et cetera, by comparison to other forms of generating electricity. So that being said, we're obviously happy. I don't know if you have anything else further you want to say. We truly appreciate your time. We appreciate the comments from the community. As I mentioned to a few of them, and I got at least one card up here, we're always happy to follow up with people. And again, thank you for your time and consideration.
At this time, we'll close the hearing portion of this petition. We won't have time for a voting meeting today. Can we vote on this tomorrow, Kim?
Are you able to do tomorrow?
You don't have to be here for the voting portion.
It's just the vote and the conditions.
What time would that be? Same time again?
1:30.
It starts at 1:30 in this room.
Just give me 1 second. Well, we can be here tomorrow.
Okay. All right, so the hearing for this petition Z250077, then it will be strictly for a vote. There will be no more testimony that takes place tomorrow. Just be the vote on behalf of the board, and discussion will happen tomorrow. That's October 16th at 1:30 p.m. in this room. So then the other item on the agenda that we have to do is I'd like to open the meeting for application Z25-0072. The applicant is Pivot Energy IL216 LLC. The request is for a conditional use permit to allow a commercial solar energy facility. The PIN number associated with this application is 17-11-100-001, and the property consists of approximately 56 acres and is located on the south side of Hemmingson Road, approximately 1,470 feet west of the intersection of Hemmingson Road and McHugh Road in Coral Township, Illinois. This hearing will also be continued to tomorrow, October 16th, 2025, at 1:30 p.m. in this room. So at this time, our hearing for today is closed.
Linnea, do you want to say that it's all on video?
I thought this was going to be